Chapter 80. Andre's vision clearly indicated that the enemy had fallen into a coma, so he stopped attacking. He took out a bundle of rope from his backpack and prepared to tie the captive up and bring her back to Lincoln City. He wanted to teach her a good lesson and let her reestablish her correct outlook on life and values. Although this woman's hands were probably stained with the blood of innocent people, it was caused by her painful past. As a person who strictly adhered to the bottom line of morality, Andre felt that he should give her a chance to correct herself. Unless she was an evil bastard, he would not kill a captive so easily, let alone such a beautiful captive. Men would always subconsciously show mercy to beautiful women. This was the result of education, and it was also the nature of their genes. Perhaps if it was an old and ugly man, he would have already been killed in exchange for experience points. Taflin, who had fallen into a coma, was very quiet. She looked like most beautiful women who had fallen asleep. She was serene and beautiful, especially after she removed the charming smile on her face. She looked much younger than before, only around 24-25 years old. Although she had sprayed a lot of perfume all over her body, there was still a faint smell of sulfur. Andre squatted down and pressed his hand on her neck. After confirming that there was still a pulse, he was slightly relieved. He raised his mithril scimitar and cut open the sticky and tough spiderweb. Just as he was about to use the rope to tie the woman's hands, a dark red flame suddenly appeared out of nowhere and instantly burned the rope to ashes. If he had not reacted quickly enough, he would not have been able to keep his hands. In order to prevent any accidents, he quickly retreated more than 10 meters, and, at the same time, he let Little Eye enter a state of alert. After the dark red flame burned the rope, it kept spinning around Taflin. After only a few seconds, her body seemed to have been blown up. She grew from about 1.7 meters to nearly 2 meters, and a pair of huge bat wings grew out of her back. The small horns on her forehead became countless times larger, and the boots on her feet became forked hooves. Her hands also became sharp claws. Now, just from her appearance alone, she was no longer a rare half-demon, but a true demon. Judging from her appearance, she should be a succubus that was in the middle of the pack among the demons. In particular, her beautiful face and smooth and flawless skin exuded a fatal attraction all the time. Her well-proportioned body made people want to pounce on her to caress and kiss her. Damn it, why do I always encounter bad luck? It's like stepping in dog shit. Andre finally couldn't help but curse in a low voice. No wonder he lost his composure. Demons lived in a place called the Bottomless Abyss, which was said to be the source of evil in the entire universe. The environment there was extremely harsh, so even the weakest abyss larva could easily kill several ordinary humans. The succubus was listed as a terrifying creature with a challenge rating of 8 in a book called Monster Illustrated Handbook. This challenge rating didn't refer to a single person, but to a whole team of 4 to 6 people. In other words, everyone's profession level had to be above 8. Otherwise, it was very likely that the whole team would be wiped out. Andre's spellcasting level was only 5, and he hadn't learned any level 3 arcane spells. Level 1 or 2 spells wouldn't be able to cause fatal damage to the succubus's strong body. The only thing he was thankful for was that he still had a mithril machete in his hand, which could cause extra damage when fighting against demons. In the blink of an eye, the unconscious half-demon flapped her wings and flew up. Her 2 eyes slowly opened, shooting out 2 extremely evil rays. She then laughed and waved the whip in her hand and said, "How is it, cute little brother? My trump card isn't bad, right? You're a true demon?" Andre narrowed his eyes and asked carefully. He could feel the powerful energy in her body, and at the same time, his body began to become excited, as if it was attracted and bewitched. This was the power of a succubus. Even without using any innate ability, she could still seduce mortals and make them fall into lust and obsession, unable to extricate themselves. Demon? Ha 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 ha. The woman immediately laughed and shook her head. No, I'm not a demon. This is just an ability contained in my blood. As long as my life is in danger, it will automatically activate. It's all thanks to you showing mercy just now. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the chance to use it. In order to express my gratitude, I've decided to use the whip to show you some love. Don't worry, you won't die." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly dove down and swung the long whip full of barbs at his face. Her speed was so fast that it was like she was a completely different person from before. Although Andre dodged with his 17 points of dexterity, he still couldn't completely avoid it. His right hand was scraped, and in an instant, flesh and blood flew everywhere. A large piece of skin and a small amount of muscle were torn off, and blood flowed continuously from his fingers. It hurt. It hurt so much. He didn't know what the barbs on the whip were, but he could feel that some kind of substance was stimulating his nerves, and a burst of needle-like feeling rushed to his brain. As long as he moved his fingers, the pain would immediately be magnified dozens of times. In the blink of an eye, his whole body was soaked in sweat. Seeing Andre's battered and exhausted appearance, the woman immediately became excited. While waving the whip, she asked loudly, "How is it? Does it hurt a lot?" "Don't worry, the best is yet to come." The barbs on the whip are the bones of a kind of fish in the ocean. When the world is in danger, they will stand up to protect itself. It contains a special poison that can cause any creature that touches it to feel unbearable pain. As time passes, your body will become more and more sensitive. In the end, even if it's just a layer of skin, you'll feel like your intestines are being ripped apart. Madam, I have to say that your mind is really sick. I can even imagine that you must have been hit by this whip countless times in your childhood. Otherwise, you wouldn't have become like this. Do you think you could defeat me by temporarily turning into a succubus? You're too naive. As he spoke, Andre instantly activated the magic ring on his finger. The level, one arcane spell, magic missile, drew 2 arcs and accurately hit the hand that was holding the whip. Even though the demon's muscles were very strong, blood still splattered everywhere. The whip that was waving at high speed immediately came to a halt. Without any hesitation, he immediately rushed up and swung his mithril machete. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The whip was directly cut into 3 pieces, completely destroying this torturous weapon. It probably couldn't be repaired anymore. Chapter 81. After temporarily dispelling the threat, Andre quickly let little I use magic rays to harass the opponent. While he endured the pain and focused on casting spells, using the shortest amount of time to complete the level, 2 arcane spell Melf's Acid Arrow. A colorless, translucent acid with a pungent smell shot out from his palm. It accurately hit the opponent's thigh and immediately made a sizzling sound. The terrifying acid corroded a large area of delicate skin as soon as it came into contact with it. Spell Penetration counteracted the demon's resistance to acid, and a large area of bloody flesh was exposed. "Ah, wizard, I'm going to skin you." The unbearable pain made the woman unable to maintain her disguise. She let out a heart-wrenching scream and wail. Her 2 evil eyes were full of hatred. She flapped her huge bat wings and rushed over. Her 2 sharp claws were glowing with a dark light. Without asking, it was obvious that they were not much worse than swords. "Sorry, you're no match for me. You can't skin me." Andre didn't back down. After that, he immediately activated the stun scroll in his hand. Spell Penetration took effect again. It instantly made the succubus Tavelin pause for a second. Then Little Eye's Frost Ray accurately hit her back. Her whole movement was half a beat slower. Taking advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Andre dodged the sharp claws and placed the sharp mithril machete on her neck. He shouted, "Madam, you'd better stop all your hostile actions immediately. Otherwise, I guarantee that I'll be able to chop off this beautiful head of yours before you can do anything." Now he could see that this Tavelin only had the body of succubus, but she didn't have the wisdom and talent to match it. A real succubus could use a lot of spell-like abilities, including Charm Monster, Dark Magic, Blasphemy, Detect Kindness, Detect Thoughts, Death Magic, Suggestion, Precise Teleportation, and so on. Some of them were above level 6 or 7 arcane spells. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so difficult to deal with. But the one in front of him didn't use any talent spells except for a charm spell before the transformation and an unknown fire spell during the transformation. She only relied on her weapon and physical strength to fight. It was simply stupid to the extreme. But thanks to her, Andre only suffered a minor injury in the battle. Although the wound on his hand looked terrible, it was actually not serious. His bones and tendons didn't receive any damage. At most, it was just a heavy bruise. He should be fine after a few days of simple bandaging and resting. The only problem was that the barbs were coated with something similar to a neurotoxin. It was really unbearable. He now had the urge to chop off the whole thing. "Are you really willing to kill me?" After the woman found the machete on her neck, she instantly changed her charming face. She deliberately pushed out her plump chest, obviously intending to seduce Abel. But unfortunately, Andre's hand was in so much pain that he didn't have the mind to care about anything else. He directly cut her smooth skin with a machete and said in a cold tone, "Remove the demon state." Immediately, "I'm not in a good mood at all, so don't try to challenge my patience." Feeling the pain from her neck, the woman immediately stopped moving. She obediently raised her hands and shouted, gently, "You see, I'm already doing as you said. Take that damn mithril weapon away." After that, her body began to shrink rapidly. Her wings, horns, claws, and hooves quickly returned to their original state. Even the skin on her thighs that was corroded by Melf's acid arrow returned to normal. She instantly collapsed to the ground as if she hadn't eaten for a few days. She didn't even have the strength to stand up. There was no doubt that this was the price of transforming into a succubus. The body's stored fat was greatly consumed. At this moment, she was only skin and bones. There was no beauty at all. If it weren't for the fact that she was still struggling to breathe, Andre would have thought that this was a dry corpse instead of a living person. He squatted down and stared at Tayflin's complicated eyes. He lowered his voice and said, "If you want to live, you'd better tell me everything you know now. Otherwise, I'll hand you over to the Mage Association. I believe you should know best what will happen if you fall into their hands." The reason why the mages on Oliel were feared by countless people was not only because of their powerful spells, but also because of their terrifying and exuberant curiosity. Why was it terrifying? Because sometimes, in order to study the function of a certain organ in the human body, they would even buy hundreds of slaves in a row and then cut open their stomachs one by one to observe the operation of the organ, completely ignoring the lives of the slaves. Unless the research was completed, there would be a continuous stream of people dying because of this. Although similar situations were rare among the mages, to some extent, most of them were very similar to the mad scientists in science fiction movies. They were obsessed with unexplainable, mysterious phenomena, especially the demon bloodline Tayflin. Basically, if one fell into their hands, it would be impossible to escape death. Moreover, before death, they would be subjected to extremely cruel torture and abuse. In the end, it was very likely that they wouldn't even be able to piece together a complete corpse. It had to be known that due to the god's protection of the entire world, most demons were unable to directly come to human society from the abyss. They could only lure mortals and achieve their goals through various bloody rituals and sacrifices. Taflins were often mixed blood, children born from the union of females and demons during this process. They were very valuable to mages. The mages were like the scientists of this magical world, tirelessly solving all kinds of unknown mysteries. It was said that thousands of years ago, there was a powerful magic civilization that tried to solve the secrets of the gods. However, just as they were about to succeed, they were jointly destroyed by the gods, leaving behind a memorable legend and the largest desert on the continent. Tayflin, who had completely lost his ability to move, obviously knew this, so when he heard that he would be handed over to the Mage Association, his eyes instantly showed boundless fear. He hurriedly shouted in a hoarse voice, "No, no, no, you can't do this. I swear I'll tell you everything, and I'm willing to be your slave, as long as you don't hand me over to those lunatics. I beg you, please don't do that. Otherwise, you might as well kill me right now." Chapter 82. Perhaps it was because he was too scared, or perhaps he had exhausted all his strength. But even though Taflin's expression was ferocious, his voice was very soft. If Andre hadn't been so close to him, he wouldn't have been able to hear what he was saying. It was clear that this woman was scared out of her wits. She would rather be a slave than become a mage's experimental subject. It seemed like she had similar experience, or she wouldn't have been so agitated. Seeing that the threat had taken effect, Andre didn't waste any more time and asked in a low voice, "Tell me, which force do these pirates belong to? Why are they attacking merchant ships near Lincoln City?" He was now eager to know who he had offended so that he could have a better idea. Whether it was the pirate captain's profession rank or the expensive mithril scimitar, it was clear that the other party had a powerful background. They are the capable subordinates of the pirate king of the Sardinia Islands in the south. They came here to take revenge for the naval battle half a year ago. I also know a big secret. There's a noble in the city who is their ally. It is because of this person that the pirates have been able to succeed time and time again, but I don't know who it is. I only joined them halfway, and they don't trust me at all. The weak woman didn't dare to hide anything and directly told him everything. There was no doubt that she didn't want to fall into the hands of a crazy mage. She didn't care about anything else. The pirate king of the Sardinia Islands? Andre's face showed a trace of understanding, immediately understanding the cause and process of the whole incident. The Sardinia Islands are located south of Lincoln City. It would take 10 days to a week to travel by fast boat. Due to the complicated waters there were many reefs and whirlpools, making it a natural refuge for the pirates. There were about 100,000 people living there, including their families and slaves. They were the biggest threat to the entire Green Sea Alliance. They often plundered merchant ships passing by and were very powerful. Half a year ago, Lincoln City took the lead in forming a joint fleet and engaged in an unprecedented naval battle with the pirates outside the Sardinia Islands. In the end, they won with a slight advantage. The pirates lost 2/3 of their ships and at least 5,000 elite sailors, so they decided to take revenge. Just as they were about to make their move, an ambitious noble in the city was planning a conspiracy. The two of them hit it off. One side provided information, and the other was in charge of the robbery. Perhaps this noble was the one who sold the stolen goods, because he could make a lot of money from it. It seemed that the situation was worse than he had expected. According to his original plan, as long as he silenced them, he could have guild leader Boris deal with the matter in a low-key manner. However, now that there was a traitor, no matter how low-key it was, he would still be discovered by the other party. Then, the news would be passed to the pirate king of the Sardinia Islands. At that time, he would definitely be blacklisted. Perhaps it would not be long before assassination, poisoning, and framing would follow. Everyone knew that low-level mages were very vulnerable when they were attacked and could be killed easily. Andre felt that if he were the enemy, he would definitely not let go of such an opportunity so easily. Therefore, he had to be extra careful in the coming days. He not only had to guard against the enemy, but also the traitor hidden in the huge noble group. Although the Mage Association in Lincoln City was quite powerful and could sometimes even control the political situation, the power was still controlled by the nobles in general, especially the 4 strongest Grand Dukes. Each of them had their own private armed forces. Just the feudal knights alone added up to more than 100. In addition to the hired elite warriors, once they joined forces, they would definitely be able to suppress the Mage Association. This also meant that before they found suspects and evidence, they would probably have to live in fear for a while. After sighing helplessly, Andre stood up and shouted at the dark surroundings, "Come out! Come out, all of you! It's safe now. We'll take the ship back to Lincoln City now." As soon as he finished speaking, more than 20 girls rushed out excitedly from every corner. Chloe even pounced on him and gave him a passionate kiss. She was panting heavily as she shouted excitedly, "My hero, you're amazing. Not only did you kill all the pirates on the ship, you even defeated a powerful demon. You're just like the heroes in the bard stories. Oh, heavens, I think I've fallen in love with you." Looking at the noble girl who was hanging on his body, her eyes sparkling, Andre's face immediately showed a helpless and bitter smile. Miss, I can guarantee that this is not love, but a sense of dependence that arises when you're helpless. Once we return to a safe place, it won't take long for you to return to normal. No, I swear in the name of the goddess of dawn, Lucia, this is definitely love. Can't you feel the violent beating of my heart? You can touch it if you don't believe me, Chloe said as she grabbed a hand and placed it on her full, snow-white chest. Before Andre could react, he immediately felt his palm touch two soft lumps. He hurriedly pulled his hand back, his expression becoming rather awkward. He didn't expect this noble girl to be so passionate, especially when she was only wearing a translucent corset. It was really a little irresistible. However, Chloe obviously didn't notice this and said to herself, "How is it? Can you feel my rapidly beating heart? This is the proof of love." Although Andre wanted to say that he didn't feel any heartbeat and only felt a rising desire, he really didn't want to discourage this noble girl who was both passionate and a little naturally silly, so he immediately changed the topic. "Miss, I think now is not the time to talk about love. The most important thing now is to leave this damn place. Come, girls, give me a hand and move these goods onto the deck. Then we'll raise the sails and set sail. I believe it won't be long before we return to the safety of Lincoln City." "Of course, Honorable Sir Mage. No problem. We'll listen to you." The rescued girls all nodded in agreement and began to move the boxes and barrels on the shore onto the deck. Fortunately, these goods weren't heavy, and it wasn't too strenuous for them to move them. Seeing that everyone was busy, Chloe was embarrassed to be idle. Her pair of white, tender feet ran to the deck to help drag the corpses of the pirates to the side. Although the large number of corpses made her face pale, she didn't vomit at least. Chapter 83. While the women were moving up and down, Andre quietly carried Tayflin and placed her on the bed in the captain's cabin. She was extremely weak at the moment, and it seemed that she would not be able to get out of bed for at least a week, so there was no need to worry about her escaping halfway. After doing all this, he joined the moving team. It took them a whole hour to move all the goods to the deck. At this moment, the draft of the ship had become very deep, and it was obvious that it had reached its load limit. If not for the fact that the sea here was also very deep, there was a possibility that the ship would have run aground. As a veteran sailboat enthusiast, Andre knew very well how to operate these beautiful and ancient ships. Under his command and participation, the unknown ship quickly put away the anchor, hung the sail, and slowly sailed out. The wind from the sewer was not strong, but it was enough to move the ship. After a few minutes, everyone left the dark cave and entered the vast sea. As expected, this place was very close to Lincoln City. It was only a cliff that extended into the sea that blocked the lighthouse and the watchtower, so the pirates' hiding place had not been discovered. The entrance of the cave was covered by dense vines, and it was impossible to see clearly if one did not get close. There was no doubt that if the locals were not very familiar with the surrounding terrain, it would be impossible to find such a hidden place. It must be the information provided by the noble who colluded with the pirates. Otherwise, it would be impossible to find any clues just by passing by. Driving this unknown ship, Andre quickly sailed into the bay of Lincoln City with a group of disheveled women. The two warships that were patrolling nearby seemed to have recognized the mark on the pirate ship and did not hesitate to surround them from the left and right. In a short while, they formed an encirclement. At the same time, hundreds of troops appeared near the port, ready for battle. After a few minutes, the warships on both sides began to send people to shout warnings, asking the people on the ship to sail in the designated direction, or they would immediately launch an attack. Although they had already observed a large number of corpses and women on the deck through their binoculars, they did not dare to take it lightly, because this pirate ship had been too brutal recently. Not only did it plunder merchant ships, but it also killed all the sailors and merchants on board after looting. Finally, it sank all the things that couldn't be taken away. It could be said that it was extremely brutal. Andre did not want to taste the ballista for the time being, so he could only slow down in the direction pointed by the warships and slowly sail into the berth. The soldiers who had been waiting for a long time swarmed up and surrounded everyone. As soon as a feudal knight in full armor stepped on the deck, he noticed the corpses everywhere and the panicked women. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward and shouted, "Don't panic. I'm the chief knight of the port garrison Aist. Who's in charge? I have some questions now." He could tell that the pirates on the ship were probably all dead, and these women were the victims. The most important thing now was to figure out what had happened. "Aist, Goddess bless you. I didn't expect that the first person I saw when I came ashore would be you." Chloe covered her mouth and shouted in surprise. At this moment, she was tightly wrapped in a worn-out cloak, tightly wrapping around her attractive figure. She did not look like a noble at all, especially her hair, which had not been washed for a long time. Her face and neck were also dirty, not much different from other women. However, the feudal knight who called himself Aist apparently recognized this noble girl, immediately rushed over and knelt on one knee. "God of protection bless you. Miss Chloe, it's great that you're alive. Forget those painful memories. I promise to hang the corpses of these damn pirates on the wall for the seabirds to eat, cursing their souls to never be able to rest in peace." "You're wrong, knight. I don't have any painful memories, because when those filthy pigs wanted to violate me, a hero appeared and saved me. At the same time, he also saved those tortured women. He single-handedly killed all the pirates on the ship. That scene is unforgettable." As she spoke, Chloe's face blushed faintly, looking like a young girl in love. Her eyes subconsciously looked towards the direction of the bridge. Aist originally thought that the noble girl purposely made up this story to save her face. After all, the other women on the ship had obvious signs of being violated. How could such a beautiful, noble girl be spared? But after careful observation, he discovered that her forehead, neck, and cheeks still retained the characteristics of a virgin, and there were no signs of being violated. He immediately realized that all this was true, and hurriedly asked, "Miss Chloe, may I ask where this hero you spoke of is now? I need to ask him about the specific situation." "There, the one who just walked out of the bridge is him." Chloe pointed at the red-haired Andre. "He's a member of the Magic Association of Lincoln City, a hero like in the stories of bards. Not only did he kill the cruel pirate captain, but he also defeated a terrifying demon." "Demon?" Ace's face instantly changed. "Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? This is a huge matter. If it's true, then we have to report it to the temple immediately." Chloe nodded without hesitation. "Of course I didn't see wrongly. She has horns on her head, huge bat-like wings on her back, forked hooves, sharp claws, eyes filled with evil light. Oh, that's right. There's also her red and smooth skin. I'm really envious of how her skin looks so tender and attractive. If only I had it too, the hero would definitely fall in love with me." After saying that, she touched her face regretfully, revealing her natural airhead and love-struck nature. Knight Aist understood the personality of this young lady of the Mariel family very well, and smiled helplessly as he comforted her. "You're already beautiful enough. The reason why your skin isn't smooth is because you haven't been eating and sleeping well recently, and you haven't bathed for too long. I guarantee that you'll be radiant again after a week of rest." "Really? That's great. Then I'll have to clean up quickly, or else my hero will be taken away by someone else." Chloe finished her words and was about to jump off the deck and run towards the city along the pier. He didn't know what was wrong with her brain, but she didn't even consider whether her athletic ability could do this. Chapter 84. "Miss, I'll send someone to inform your aunt, Countess Anastasia. You should wait here for a while." Knight Hut hurriedly stopped the young noble lady. He didn't dare to let her run out on the streets. If something happened, no one would be able to bear the responsibility. One had to know that Count Luke was one of the most powerful nobles in Naples City, and his sister, Countess Anastasia, was also the darling of the upper class of Linden City. If anything happened to this beloved young lady, the person in charge would definitely die without a complete corpse. Fortunately, Chloe's temper wasn't bad at all despite her noble status. She nodded happily. "All right, I'll wait here for my aunt. I'll also stay with my hero for a while." After saying that, she ran up to Andre and kissed him passionately. Then, She pressed her whole body against him, unwilling to let go no matter what. This scene shocked the surrounding people so much that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They couldn't believe that the young lady of the Mariel family, who had never shown any interest in men, would do such a thing. It was even more unbelievable than the sun rising from the west. In an instant, all kinds of feelings of envy, jealousy, and hatred spread rapidly. Even Night Hut felt sour in the bottom of his heart. Fortunately, his self-control was strong. He immediately ordered a soldier to report to the city. Then, he took a deep breath and walked directly to the two people who were showing off their affection. To be precise, it was Chloe who was showing off her affection. Andre only responded with a few words. He was secretly planning to buy those magic scrolls when he got the money. In fact, it was a very pleasant thing to be entangled with a beautiful girl overflowing with passion. However, if this beautiful girl hadn't bathed for 2 whole weeks and kept kissing with her smelly mouth, no one would be able to stand it. He was in such a situation now. Just when he was in a dilemma, his savior, Night Hut, appeared. He first glanced at Small Eyes, the magical pet that was flying around, and then looked at the sapphire badge that was flashing with a magical halo. He immediately realized that this was a genuine official mage, so he immediately put away his slightly arrogant attitude and bowed slightly. "Good afternoon, esteemed mage. First, please allow me to thank you on behalf of Linton City for everything you've done. Also, I heard from Miss Chloe that you've defeated a powerful demon. Is that true?" Seeing that someone had finally come, Andre calmly pushed the noble lady away and pretended to bow back. "You're welcome. I'm just completing a mission from a mage association. As for the demon, it's fake. It's actually a mixed blood of a human and a demon. Her scientific name is Taflin. She has an innate ability that allows her to temporarily transform into a demon form in a critical situation. But the consequences are very serious. She's currently on her last breaths in the cabin." Taflin? Oh, damn it. I should have caught this bastard and hanged her in public. When Hut heard the scientific name of a half-demon, his face was instantly filled with disgust and hatred. Obviously, his point of view was similar to that of most humans. He believed that Taflins were born to be captured and executed. However, Andre had already promised to protect the woman in the cabin. He immediately reached out his hand to stop the feudal knight. "Don't be so agitated. She's now my slave. According to the laws of Linton City, I have the right to capture anyone who participated in piracy as a slave. Right? That seems to be the case. But are you sure you want a dirty and evil Taflin as a slave? They're all lowly thieves and thugs. There's no loyalty to speak of. They'll betray their masters whenever they have the chance. I personally suggest that if you need a slave, it's best to take a look at the market. Only those who have been trained by the merchants will be loyal to their masters." Hut gave a very sincere suggestion. His prejudice against half-demons wasn't just a matter of a day or two. It was a deep-rooted mainstream value. Even Chloe nodded. This showed that the entire Green Sea Alliance was like this. Perhaps the woman lying in the cabin had received a lot of unfair treatment, so she joined the pirates to take revenge. "Thank you for your advice, but please don't forget that I'm a mage, so don't worry too much. Help me prepare a carriage and send her to the slums, 60 White Dew Street. Just tell her my name. I'm Andre." As soon as he finished speaking, Chloe immediately covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Heavens, you're actually living in the slums. Are all the mages in Linton City so poor that they can't even afford a decent villa?" "Miss, I think this mage has some special reasons. After all, he's not poor at all. Look at this beautiful sailboat. Look at these goods, and add the rewards from the Mage Association for completing the mission. I dare to bet that with all these things added together, it's enough to build a luxurious villa in the best part of the city." Before Andre could speak, Hut hurriedly defended himself. This matter concerned the reputation of Linton City. He didn't want to be misunderstood by the nobles of other cities. As a feudal knight, he believed that he had the duty to protect the honor of his city. Although the Green Sea Alliance seemed to be an alliance of city-states on the surface, it was actually very loose. It was somewhat similar to the ancient Greek city-states on Earth. When faced with an enemy, they would unite and fight against each other. Occasionally, there would be short wars over trade. Therefore, the residents of each city-state would protect their own reputation and interests. Although Night Hut secretly admired Chloe from the bottom of his heart, he didn't hesitate to side with Andre when there were differences and misunderstandings. In his eyes, although Andre was a rival in love, he was also an official member of the Mage Association in the city. Chloe, on the other hand, was a noble of Naples City. Her aunt hadn't been integrated into the noble system of Linton City, so she could only be considered an outsider. When choosing between an outsider and one of his own, of course he would choose to side with one of his own. It sounded a little naive and silly, but this was the special value of this era. At the same time, it was the result of constant propaganda from the upper class. Ask any citizen of Linton City, and you'll definitely get the same answer. Chapter 85. Perhaps only those great nobles who saw through the interest between people understood that everything in this world revolved around interests. If the city-state could not protect their interests, then betrayal would become a matter of course. Just like the traitor who cooperated with the Sardinia pirates, there was no doubt that he belonged to this category. Watching the skinny Taiflin being carried into the carriage, Andre finally felt relieved. He knew that Elsa was a very kind and gentle woman. She would definitely take good care of this half-demon. Even if she hated him, she would save him first. Obviously, the pirate ship had caused a huge loss to the entire Lincoln City. After it docked at the berth, the whole city was alarmed. Many merchants heard the news and hurriedly came to check if there were any of their goods. They wanted to buy back a batch of goods to minimize the loss. At the same time, some people came to check if there were any of their daughters or relatives among the survivors. The women who were ravaged by the pirates were generally pretty. Most of them were from the wealthy class. They were either merchants or small nobles. Some were young and beautiful maids. Otherwise, they would not have been kept by the pirates as a tool to vent their desires. Looking at the women hugging their heads and crying with their families, Ezek could not help but sigh deeply. Sigh, it's really tragic. These poor girls will probably have a serious psychological trauma. But compared to those who were slaughtered, they are still considered lucky. At least they can still be reunited with their families. Thank you, Mr. Mage. You did something that us knights could never do. I used to be a little dissatisfied with the Mage Association for occupying a lot of resources. Now it seems that you do have the right. Haha, thank you for the compliment. This operation was quite dangerous. I almost lost my life, Andre said as he stretched out his bloody hand. The bleeding had stopped, but the muscles showed a strange black color. It was obviously a symptom of poisoning. Fortunately, the poison was not fatal because the health value in his retina did not change. It was still November 18th injured. Ezet noticed the abnormal color of the wound and immediately put it to his nose to smell it. He cursed in a low voice, "Damn it! This is the poison of the devilfish. I suggest that you go to the temple for treatment later. Otherwise, the nerves in your hands will become very sensitive. If you touch them with a little force, you will instantly feel like you have been hit by a horse. The pain is simply unbearable." Must we go to the temple? Andre asked uncertainly. Trust me, we must go to the temple. Izzet nodded affirmatively. Well, it seems that before I get my bonus, I'll have to spend a lot of money again. Andre smiled bitterly and shrugged. He was now very envious of the priests in the temple. They did not need to spend a lot of gold coins to learn profound magic, and they rarely needed to walk around. Every day, they only needed to pray to the gods they believed in to receive divine spells, and then they could make a lot of gold coins by healing those who needed it. Life was so easy and comfortable. Ha! Don't worry, I guarantee that you'll get a big reward this time. The pirate ship under our feet alone is worth 600,000 to 100,000 gold coins. Look at its hull. It's made of the best ironwood, and it's been used for no more than half a year. There's no obvious scratch on it, nor is there any trace of repair. Most importantly, it's very fast. If it's empty, none of our warships could catch up with it. Like most of the residents of Linton City, Knight Azed was also a fan of ships. In this city, ships represented trade and wealth. One could earn a lot of gold coins just by going out to sea. Therefore, he became very excited and started to introduce the good parts of this pirate ship. Andre stood at the side and listened silently. From time to time, he would ask one or two key questions. After a while, he had a general understanding of the shipbuilding capabilities of the Green Sea Alliance. He found that although the shipbuilding industry here was relatively developed, they had not built ships that were truly suitable for the ocean. Most of them were stuck at the level of the 15th century on Earth. For example, this caravel galleon was already the most advanced warship, and most of the merchant ships were based on the round and fat carrack ships on Earth. This meant that the most classic galleon ships had not been invented yet, and there was not even a shadow of the later steam-powered ships, battleships, and so on. A business opportunity. With his 19 points of intelligence, Andre instantly realized that as long as he could get a piece of territory, he could immediately build the most advanced ships in the world. Dominating the seas was just around the corner. He had personally assembled a 5-meter-long galleon ship model in his previous life, and he clearly remembered every inch of its structure. He could draw the blueprint with his eyes closed, but now was obviously not the time to show it. After all, only by keeping a secret and monopolizing it could he make a fortune. While the two were chatting, a gorgeous carriage wrapped in gold appeared at the dock. The coachman, who looked to be in his 50s, quickly jumped down and opened the door. A charming woman in her 40s wearing a lavender dress stepped out from the carriage. When Chloe saw her, she rushed up to her and shouted, "Aunt Anastasia, I missed you so much. Oh my God, my little baby, I'm so glad you're alive. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to explain it to your father." Anastasia hugged her niece tightly, tears flowing uncontrollably. After a few minutes, she finally let go. As she touched her niece, she lowered her voice and asked, "Baby, tell me, those filthy pirates didn't do anything to you, right?" "Hee, don't touch it, it's itchy." Chloe took a step back and avoided her aunt's hand. She smiled and replied, "I'm fine, because a hero came to save me at the critical moment, just like the stories of the bards." Anastasia noticed that her niece's corset was not torn, and she was instantly relieved. She then asked, "Who saved you? I have to express my gratitude and also give a generous gift. You are the treasure of the family, and as a noble, we can't be rude. That red-haired boy over there is. Although he is young, he is already an official member of the Mage Association, and the spells he uses are very powerful. I saw with my own eyes that he killed all the pirates on the ship. That scene was so exciting. Aunt, I think I've fallen in love with him." Chapter 86. Chloe's infatuated nature flared up once more as she stared at Andre with sparkling eyes. She didn't have the modesty of a noble girl at all. She even forgot that she had almost been violated by the fat and ugly pirate chef. Her natural airhead index was off the charts. "Oh, heavens! Chloe, how many times have I told you? Stop listening to the bard's unreliable stories, and don't read those made-up night novels. Most of them are too exaggerated." Anastasia slapped her forehead helplessly as she spoke. She knew her niece's personality too well. She was always immersed in fantasy and didn't even spare a glance for the young heroes in the real world. She always yearned to meet a hero in a story. "No, Auntie, I swear it's all real this time. Look at the corpses of those pirates. Do you really think that 20 or so women can help?" Chloe clearly didn't want anyone to slander the hero in her heart. She pointed to the corpses that were being carried off the ship by the soldiers. Anastasia obviously didn't want to argue at this time, so she lovingly wiped the dirt off her niece's face with a handkerchief and said, all right. You said he's a hero. He's a hero. Let's go. Bring me to meet this hero and express the gratitude of the Mariel family." In fact, she had some understanding of the profession of a mage, so she didn't believe that a teenager could be so powerful. To be able to become a mage at this age was already a genius among geniuses. Low-ranked mages usually didn't have much combat strength and could only cast a limited number of arcane spells every day. It was impossible for them to kill so many pirates. The Countess obviously didn't know that Andre had been a hunter for many years before becoming a mage. He was also very experienced in the use of weapons. Even though he had grasped the powerful arcane power, he didn't rely too much on it. He wouldn't waste his spells if he could defeat an enemy with a weapon, so the conclusions of low-ranked mages didn't have much effect on him. As the news of the pirates being wiped out spread, several luxurious carriages quickly left the city hall and sped towards the docks. There were more than 10 elite knights on both sides of the carriages, and from the noble insignia printed on the doors, there was no doubt that they were the 4 dukes with the highest authority in Linton City. At the same time, there was also movement in the Wizard Tower. President Boris cast a rank 3 arcane spell Flight on himself, and very flashily flew at a low altitude towards the docks. Seeing that more and more people were arriving, Knight Azid finally stopped showing off his knowledge of ships. He ordered his subordinates to start maintaining order at the scene, and had some soldiers carry the corpses off the corpses for the city hall. Taking advantage of the chaos, Andre hurriedly brought his magical pet to hide in a corner and quietly opened the system. Are you sure you want to allocate 7,000 EXP to mages? Confirm. Your mage level has increased to level 6. You've received a talent point. Your magic pet's level has risen to 6. You have consumed 1 ability point and chosen to strengthen spell penetration. Name, Andrew race, human alignment, neutral profession, level 6 mage experience required to level up, 17,000/30,000 memorizable arcane spells, level 0, for level 1. For level 2, for +1, effective mage badge, level 3. 3 currently mastered arcane spells, level 0, mage hand, read magic, illuminate, repair, secret imprint, magic trick, tremor, stun level 1, prismatic spray, mage armor, grease, appraisal, magic missile, burning hand level 2, invisibility, web, fireblade, fear, Melf's acid, arrow level 3, none health. Points, 11/21, injured experience points, 4750 undistributed talent points, 0 attribute points, 0 mastered abilities. Beginner potioneering, magic item crafting, scroll copying, summon magic pet, beginner blacksmithing, beginner wand crafting, magic material exemption, silent spell casting, enhanced magic penetration. Your magic can penetrate more resistant skin. Magic pet information name, small eyes race, small eyes, magic creature, alignment, neutral evil profession, magic pet level 6. This creature's level increases as its master's level increases. Health points, 25/25, healthy, special abilities, cold ray, 24 shots per day, damage ray. The main eye shoots a powerful magic ray that can produce effects such as charm, paralysis, poison, slow, or direct damage, 2 shots per day. Immune to charm spells, innate magic resistance, flying mastered abilities. Alertness, agile movement. After leveling up, he instantly felt that the magic power in his body had strengthened a lot, especially after enhancing spell penetration. He did not have to worry about being weakened when dealing with creatures with magic resistance. His combat power had increased by at least 2 levels. As for the magic pet, it had also changed from quantitative to qualitative. The huge main eye in the middle had finally mutated, emitting a colorful halo. It could cause a lot of trouble to the enemy, like a real beholder. At the critical moment, it could definitely play a decisive role. It could be said that a level 6 wizard was gradually starting to break away from the ranks of low-level wizards. One more level, and he would officially enter another level. He would be able to deal with sudden attacks with ease, because there were many powerful defensive spells and level 4 arcane spells that could protect a wizard from most damage. One had to know that the entire Linton City Wizard Association had a total of 60 members, and most of them were low-level wizards from level 1 to level 3. There were only 20 above level 5, and only 8 above level 7. Among them, Gavin Lauren was one of the best. Otherwise, he would not have been able to establish his own faction. To a certain extent, wizards were the kind of profession that was harder to level up as one progressed, but at the same time, they were also more powerful. It was said that a great wizard above level 17 who had mastered level 9 arcane spells could even distort time and space, and a legendary wizard above level 20 had the power to destroy heaven and earth. A legendary spell could make an entire city disappear from a map. However, since the decline of the magic civilization, there were very few great wizards who had mastered level 9 arcane spells in Orire. Generally speaking, wizards around level 14 to 16 like Ulysses could completely dominate a region. If he had not wanted to devour Andre's soul and did not use those powerful arcane spells, no matter how many explosions there were, it would have been useless. As for legendary wizards, they had completely disappeared. There had been no news of them for hundreds of years. Chapter 87. Andre hadn't been in a civilized society for long, so he didn't know much about the situation in Lincoln City and its surroundings. Most of his information came from books, so he was very cautious and didn't want to cause any trouble. He wanted to observe for a while before deciding if he wanted to cause a ruckus. Just as he was secretly observing the officials who came from the city to the dock, Lady Anastasia came over with her niece. She looked at him and then stretched out her right hand. Andre, who had been exposed to countless movies in his past life, immediately realized that this woman was asking him to kiss her hand. He quickly took her right hand, which was wearing a black silk glove, and kissed the back of it. "Good afternoon, madam. Is there anything I can do for you?" In fact, he had already seen Chloe, who was eagerly following beside her, so he could easily tell that this woman was the Purple Rose, Lady Anastasia. This widow, whose husband had died, was quite famous in the noble circle of Lincoln City. 3 of the 4 dukes had publicly expressed their willingness to marry her. These affairs were known to even the commoners, so it was easy to recognize her. Perhaps it was because of Andre's handsome appearance, or the fact that he kissed her hand properly, but in any case, a faint smile appeared on Lady Anastasia's originally tense face. "Young mage, I'm here to thank you for saving Chloe at a critical moment, and, at the same time, saving the reputation of the Mariel family. Please don't stand on ceremony. I'm only completing the task entrusted to me by the Mage Association. Furthermore, for a beautiful young lady like Miss Chloe, anyone who sees her would extend a helping hand. I'm just lucky enough to be here." Saying this, Andre bowed slightly, showing his good manners. Even though he thought that these so-called noble etiquette were purely invented to torture people, he still patiently went through with it in order to better integrate into the upper class. After all, even mages needed to socialize. Perhaps they needed to integrate into society, especially the noble circle. Haha, your modesty and etiquette are impressive. May I take the liberty to ask, which family are you from? Are you traveling now? Anastasia asked tentatively. Everyone knew that if a person wanted to become a mage, other than talent, they would also need a large amount of money and careful guidance. An ordinary family would not be able to afford this. Therefore, in her eyes, Andre must be a direct descendant of some great noble family, or even a famous mage family. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to become an official mage at such a young age. Of course, this had something to do with the etiquette and the way they spoke. Normally, pretentiousness and modesty were things that only great nobles would do. Andre knew that the Countess must have misunderstood him. However, he did not answer the question directly. He smiled and shook his head. "I'm sorry, madam. I can't tell you now. Please forgive me." "Oh, you don't have to explain, I understand. You're still training, so you can't reveal any information about your family. Don't worry, I don't have any other intentions. I just want to express my gratitude. According to the ancient tradition, I will give you a gift tomorrow. Please don't refuse it." Although she did not say anything, Anastasia was not unhappy at all. Instead, she showed an expression that said, "I understand everything." It really made people want to laugh. It was obvious that Andre did not understand the so-called noble tradition, but in order not to expose himself, he still bowed. "Then it would be impolite for me to refuse. Hee, this is what you deserve. Let's stop here for today. Chloe needs to take a bath and rest. Goodbye." After saying that, Anastasia curtsied and pulled her niece towards the carriage. As soon as they got into the luxurious carriage, Chloe immediately asked her aunt with a look of infatuation. "What do you think? I was right. Look at how courteous and handsome he is. I feel like I'm going to suffocate." Anastasia sighed helplessly. "Well, it seems like you didn't make a mistake this time. He is indeed a young man with great potential. He should be worthy of the Mariel family." "Wow, Aunt, you're allowing me to pursue him?" Chloe widened her eyes in surprise. In her memory, no matter what she did, she would always be opposed by her family, especially by this slightly strict aunt in front of her. Touching her beloved niece's cheek, Anastasia nodded lightly. "Yes, I agree that you should try to get along with him. After all, he's an official mage at 14 years old. No matter what, his future won't be too low. Most importantly, he's the first man you've liked. But you have to promise me that you'll stay away from those wandering bards. None of them are good. Hee hee. Don't worry. I just like to listen to stories. I won't be like the other noble ladies and elope with the bards. Besides, I already have a target to pursue," Chloe said as she winked playfully. Although she looked a bit infatuated and naive, she wasn't stupid at all. She knew that most of the bards were a group of glib liars. The noble ladies who eloped with them would end up either abandoned or kidnapped to some place. In short, it was quite miserable. The bards in this world weren't weak, pretty boys. They were real spellcasters. They were very good at playing some magical music with musical instruments. They mainly engaged in infiltration, intelligence theft, sabotage behind enemy lines, and other espionage work. More than 60% of the bards were on the wanted list all year round in various regions. Hearing Chloe's promise, Anastasia instantly let out a sigh of relief. She dotingly poked the tip of her niece's nose. "You're always so mischievous. Remember, don't develop your relationship too quickly. For those men, the more they can't get something, the better. Once they get it, they won't cherish it. You have to learn to protect yourself. Don't think about the heroes in those stories all day long." "Humph. My hero won't be the kind of person you're talking about." "That's not necessarily true. If I say no, then no." Accompanied by the noisy voices of the two women, the carriage quickly left the dock and disappeared at the end of the street. Chapter 88. Just as Andre was watching Lady Anastasia's carriage leave, President Boris descended from the sky and laughed. "Looks like your luck with women isn't bad. You actually managed to save that girl from the Mariel family. She's one of the few in the Green Sea Alliance who's kept herself clean. No one has been able to pluck such a beautiful flower. Work hard. I have faith in you." "Master, did you fly all the way here just to tease me?" Andre shrugged with a wry smile. In all honesty, he could swear to the heavens that he'd never had any thoughts about Chloe. He'd even been forced to kiss her. He'd never taken the initiative to do so. No, of course not. I'm here to congratulate you on completing the association's mission for the first time. At the same time, I'm here to find out if there's any inside information. You should know that the situation in this city is a little complicated, so you can tell me the things that aren't convenient for you to say. I'll take care of the matters regarding the nobles." Boris's eyes revealed a meaningful look as he spoke. Andre sighed slightly and took 2 steps forward to whisper into the president's ear, "It's a mole. These pirates are in contact with a noble in the city. Not only did he provide a secret hiding place, he even helped to dispose of the stolen goods. When I found this ship, I found that a large amount of goods had disappeared. Coupled with the information from the previous encirclement, this noble's power is definitely not small." Boris's expression changed greatly when he heard this news. He lowered his voice and asked, "Do you have any clues? For example, a name, a code name, a mark, and so on. In short, anything suspicious will do." As the president of the association, he knew all too well the morals of the nobles, especially those of the upper echelons. They would do anything for power and money. Even if they were caught colluding with outsiders, their entire family would suffer a calamity. However, every 10 years or so, there would still be some people who thought they were smart enough to take the risk. Every time, they bring great damage to Linen City. The last time something like this happened, 6 mages had died. He couldn't help but be nervous. "I'm sorry, this person is too careful. I didn't find any suspicious signs at all. Even the captain's log only mentioned it vaguely. I reckon that other than the Pirate King on the Sardinia Islands, no one knows his true identity. Andre directly stated his inference. He knew that he didn't have any influence in Linton City, so he had to be careful of any possible assassinations. As for the investigation, it would be better to leave it to the president. After all, the old man was the one with the most influence in the city. Damn it, looks like we have to use our spies in Sardinia. Boris gritted his teeth and cursed. He turned and walked towards the 4 dukes who had just arrived. Soon, he gathered 7 or 8 people together and discussed in a low voice. From time to time, there would be loud quarrels that would break out with red faces. However, they soon returned to normal. After more than 20 minutes, they all dispersed with a serious expression. Among them, a middle-aged man who looked very strong strode forward and handed over 2 exquisite documents and a small piece of soil on a tray. Mage Andre, thank you for everything you've done today. Although it's bad news, it's better to know in advance than to be kept in the dark. Here, this is the Baron's conferment document that we've promised. There's also a deed for a manor outside the city. It will be your land from now on. Originally, I wanted to arrange a proper conferment ceremony, but it seems that won't be possible now. Also, remember to prepare your family's coat of arms and surname as soon as possible and send it to the city hall for filing. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Andre placed one hand on his chest and bowed very formally. He then took the things on the tray with both hands. Although he didn't show it on the surface, he was actually quite excited. With this, he would truly become a member of the ruling class. Even if he went to other countries, as long as he showed the documents, he would be recognized. In this world that was dominated by feudal systems, the protection between the nobles was almost everywhere. There was even a very famous saying, "Even the most destitute noble is more honorable than the richest commoner." This showed the importance of identity. They monopolized the entire continent's knowledge, public opinion, culture, military, and high-end martial arts. They belonged to the absolute elite class. Every few years, they would promote some commoners with potential to become nobles. This was to ensure that the huge group of interests would always be able to suppress everything. As a smart man, Andre understood the benefits of joining the party. That was why he had chosen this extremely dangerous mission. Now that he had finally obtained a large amount of EXP, a bounty, and a noble title, he could finally calm down and focus on learning the profound magical knowledge. Work hard, child. I guarantee that you will have a bright future in Lincoln City, the Duke said as he patted Andre's shoulder. He turned around and entered the carriage, speeding into the city. The other 3 dukes and a few other nobles who had participated in the discussion also sped away. Obviously, they had no intention of celebrating at this moment. They were eager to know who was behind this. As the big shots left one after another, the surrounding commoners began to realize that the situation was not good. They also hurriedly left this place of trouble. A few minutes ago, it was very lively at the docks. Now, there were only a few merchants who came to redeem their goods and soldiers who were carrying the corpses of the pirates. Seeing that there were no outsiders left, President Boris immediately put on a serious expression and exhorted, "Go back and have a good rest. Remember to come to the Mage Association tomorrow. I have something to tell you, and I'll take the reward for the mission. Remember, don't wander around after dark. You may be in a bit of danger recently." Andre nodded slightly. Understood. This time, I must have angered the mastermind behind all this meticulously plotting behind the scenes. But if he thinks that I'm easy to deal with, he's very wrong. I believe that. After all, you killed all the pirates by yourself. Naturally, you don't need to be told much in terms of battle. But I still have to remind you that it's best to be careful of that Tevlin. The blood of betrayal flows in her veins. A half-demon like her has no loyalty at all. She may turn on you at any time. After saying that, Boris immediately blessed himself with a flight spell. In the blink of an eye, he rose into the sky and flew towards the Mage Tower at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 89. Looking at the president's majestic figure, Andre smiled and muttered to himself, "Thank you for your advice, but I believe that even the most evil person has a good side, even if she is a part of the demon bloodline. What's more, I also need to start cultivating my own forces. A Taflin with outstanding combat power is a rare talent." As soon as his voice fell, Knight Aist waved a parchment full of numbers and shouted, "Mr. Mage, 2/3 of the goods on the ship have been confirmed as lost, and the other 1/3 may need to be auctioned in the market. You'd better come over." "Coming," Andre replied loudly, hurriedly walked closer, and said in a half-joking tone, "Skip all the messy processes and just tell me how much money I can get." "Ha ha ha, I like your straightforwardness. The part that has been redeemed is a total of 24,650 gold coins, and there is also a batch of silverware and textiles that no one has claimed. The specific price is difficult to estimate, and we will only know after tomorrow's auction. I have to congratulate you in advance for making a fortune. Of course, you will have to deduct 20% trade tax in the end." After saying that, Knight Ace's face showed an extremely envious expression. Although, as a feudal knight, he had a beautiful manner and a rather generous salary, but it was still far from a mage's, not to mention a sum of tens of thousands of gold coins. The corner of Andre's mouth twitched when he heard that he would have to pay a 20% tax. He cursed the person who set the business tax for his son to have no asshole. Then, he spread his hands helplessly. "Knight, you only see the income. You don't see how much danger I've taken." Ace took a deep breath and sighed. Indeed, the pirates of the Sardinia Islands are all tough bones. "I heard from the people on the warship that many people died in the sea battle half a year ago. Blood and corpses dyed the sea red, and the cries of the dead souls can still be heard in the sea area where the battle took place. There is a price to pay for any victory. If Lincoln City wants to maintain its maritime advantage, it must fight against the pirates. Otherwise, the merchants will not be willing to pay taxes. By the way, I have a suggestion. Do you want to consider it?" "What is it? Let's hear it." Ade's eyes lit up as he asked softly. Andre smiled and pointed at the remaining boxes. "It's simple. I want you to help me sell the remaining goods at a high price. Starting from 50% of the market price, every time you raise the price by 10%, you will get 1% of the total. What do you think?" Obviously, he was tempting the other party with benefits so that he could sell the remaining goods at a good price. After all, silverware and textiles were relatively expensive goods. Every 10% increase in price could earn him a lot of money. It was totally worth it to pay a part of the commission. Hearing that there were benefits to be had, Knight Azit's face lit up with excitement. "No problem. Leave it to me. After deducting the taxes, I will send the payment to your residence within 2 days." No one would reject such a windfall. Moreover, it did not violate any laws. It was just a matter of convenience. As long as one was not a fool, they would know what to do. Seeing that the other party had been tempted by the benefits, Andre laughed in his heart. Sure enough, it was easy to get things done with money. He then pretended to yawn and said, "Then I'll leave it to you. I'm so tired now. I have to rush back to eat something, take a bath, and sleep. Is there a problem with leaving the ship here for now?" "Of course, but you'd better find an experienced captain to make it run. It would be a great waste for such a great ship to be left here. Thank you for your suggestion. I will consider it. Goodbye." After saying that, Andre waved his hand lightly and walked straight into the city. He had not eaten for a few hours, and his magic pet little eyes needed to be properly rewarded. Linton City was a large city that could accommodate more than 100,000 people. Andre walked for more than an hour from the port, and finally returned to his residence when the sun was about to set. When he passed by the temple, he asked the mature beauty who had treated him last time to cast a level 4 divine spell, Neutralize Toxins. Finally, the black muscles on the back of his hand were cleaned up, but the price was that he owed a total of 800 gold coins. Fortunately, the story of the elimination of the pirates had spread, so the priests of the goddess of dawn, Lucia, did not make things too difficult for him. They only asked him to pay the debt as soon as possible. If he really could not pay it back, it did not matter. He could help the temple complete a task as compensation. It had to be said that it was no wonder that the priests here were so popular in the city. The beautiful female priests were one thing, and the amiable attitude was another. They would hold several free healing activities for the poor almost every month, so they had won over a large number of believers. Coupled with the positive teachings of the goddess, it was easy for them to be accepted by the people. Dragging his hungry stomach, Andre knocked on the door and shouted, "Elsa, Beverly, open the door. I'm starving to death." After a short few seconds, the young widow hurriedly opened the door. Man Liang shouted in surprise, Oh my God, you're finally back safe and sound. Go and see the lady with the horns on her head and a tail behind her. She seems to be dying." "What? Take me to see her." As soon as he heard that Tavelin's life was in danger, Andre did not care about anything else and rushed into the house. Soon, he saw the half-demon on the sofa in the living room. At this moment, she seemed to be nearing the end of her life. Not only was her skin a sickly dark red, but her pupils were also showing signs of dilation. She was like an old woman with one foot in the grave and could take her last breath at any moment. When the little girl saw her mentor appear, she immediately stood up and asked worriedly, "This Annie just vomited a lot of blood. She won't die, right?" "Don't worry, as long as I'm here, she won't die." Andre gently touched the girl's head and hurriedly squatted down to check on Tavelin's condition. After a few minutes, he found that Tavelin had overdrawn too much of her life force, causing her organs to fail. Even if he sent her to the temple, it would be useless. Just when he was at his wit's end, the half-demon suddenly opened her eyes and growled in an extremely weak voice, "Blood. Give me your blood. Only blood full of magic can let me live. Please, give me your blood." Chapter 90. As the saying goes, saving someone's life is like putting out a fire. Andre didn't hesitate at all. He picked up the knife on the table and slit his wrist. Tafelin immediately grabbed it and sucked on it greedily. His skinny body recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. His eyes also regained their luster. It was as if he had been reborn. Seeing that Tafelin had recovered from his half-dead state, Andre immediately pulled his arm back. Because his vitality wasn't very good to begin with, his HP dropped from 11/21 to 7/21 in just half a minute. He even began to feel a little dizzy, obviously caused by excessive blood loss. Elsa hurriedly took out a clean white cloth and carefully bandaged the wound. At the same time, she looked at the half-demon with fear in her eyes. In her eyes, any creature that fed on human blood must be an evil monster, so she was instinctively afraid. Andre noticed that the young widow's hands were trembling slightly. He smiled and kissed her cheek and comforted her. "Don't be afraid. Leave this to me. You go prepare dinner first. Remember to make more. I'm starving." Elsa's face was slightly red. She nodded shyly. "Okay, I'll go prepare now." Her seductive look immediately made Andre's mouth water. But considering that his body was a little weak, he could only dismiss the idea. He sat directly on the sofa and stared at the half-demon whose eyes were flickering. "Don't you want to say something? Like introduce yourself or something. You can call me Eunice. I'm from Kuka City in the far west. I don't want to say anything else." Tafelin stroked his fiery red hair and replied with a complicated expression. "A very good name. It symbolizes happiness and victory. It seems that your parents must love you very much. My name is Andre. You can also call me Master, because when you came ashore, you were already registered as a slave." As he spoke, Andre took out a contract from his bosom that stated that he was protected by Linton City. Although he sympathized with the woman's childhood experience, it couldn't be used as an excuse to trample on other people's lives and dignity. So he was prepared to show her his power first. Hearing that she had become a slave, Eunice surprisingly did not have any reaction. She only nodded slightly. "Understood. I will obey all your orders unconditionally according to the conditions we agreed upon." Andre felt that Tafelin's behavior was a little strange. In the previous battle, she would rather fight to the death than become a slave. Now, however, she was so obedient that it made him wonder if she was plotting something. When the atmosphere became a bit awkward, Beverly, who was bored to death, finally found something interesting. The pearl, flying in the parlor. Although this little one from the demon family looked a little ferocious, especially that big mouth full of sharp teeth that only appeared in horror stories, the little lowly automatically ignored this point and began to use a piece of leftover bread to lure Little Eye down. Seeing this scene, Andre couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. He reminded loudly, "Apprentice, my magic pet eats meat. If you have wine, you can also have some. Waving a piece of bread around won't do much." As a matter of fact, Beholder was an extremely evil and twisted magical creature. According to the introduction in the books, they were extremely crazy. They would even kill their own kind if they were slightly different in appearance. As for normal humans, they would either kill and eat them directly or use magic to charm them and make them their slaves. Pearl was a creature that had not fully evolved, especially in terms of intelligence. It was like a 10-year-old child. Even so, it would often transmit some strange thoughts, such as that human over there looks very interesting. I want to pry open his head and see what's inside. If Andre hadn't lived for 2 lifetimes, he would have been affected long ago. Of course, what surprised him even more was that a demon's sense of taste had basically deteriorated. Therefore, they especially liked food with bright colors and stimulating tastes. And wine happened to satisfy these 2 needs, so it became one of their favorite things. After receiving the hint, Beverly quickly ran upstairs and took a bottle of cheap wine. She forcefully pulled out the cork. Smelling the alcohol, Little Eye instantly sprinted forward at a speed of 100 meters. It opened its big mouth and held the bottle in its mouth. Then, it raised its head and gulped down all the wine in one breath. After that, it wobbled for a few meters and fell on the stairs with a plop, rolling down like a big meatball. It was obvious that Little Eye was drunk. Its 4-stalk eyes were aimlessly swinging around, and its huge mane was a little blurry. Its mouth was constantly making strange noises with unknown meanings. Even Andre, who had a spiritual connection with Little Eye, didn't know what it was saying. Beverly curiously poked Little Eye's chubby body and raised her head to ask loudly, "Teacher, when I was in the Mage Tower, I heard that the magic pets of mages all have some special abilities. What can this little flying monster of yours do?" Andre answered with a smile. "Its eyes can shoot out deadly magic rays. If an ordinary person touches it, they will immediately freeze to death." "Wow, that's really amazing." Beverly widened her eyes in surprise. "I heard that most of the mages in the association like to use ravens as their magic pets. At most, they can only send messages." Hee. Ravens are a very smart bird. Not only can they send messages, but they can also speak. If you like, I can catch one for you when you become an official mage. Saying this, Andre stood up from the sofa, picked up the drunk Little Eye from the ground, and put on the table at the side. Although this little guy was a little crazy, but to a mage, especially a transmigrator like him who hid a huge secret, it was definitely the only partner and friend that he could share everything with. "No, I don't want a raven. If I become a mage, I will definitely choose a beautiful and powerful magic pet." The girl waved her little fist and announced loudly. Seeing the serious expression on Beverly's face, Andre's originally gloomy mood instantly became a lot more cheerful. He laughed loudly and said, "Haha, all right. I hope you can find a magic pet that suits your heart. But before that, I want to test your learning progress." "No problem. I've already finished reading the entirety of Magic Enlightenment." "Ask away." Beverly patted her chest with force, showing a look of confidence. Chapter 91. First question. How many schools of magic are there in total? What are they? Andre thought for a while and asked a simple question. He wasn't sure if the girl could really understand the parts that were too difficult to understand at her current age, so he planned to take it step by step. After all, learning was not something that could be rushed. The 8 schools of magic are the School of Defense, the School of Incantation, the School of Language, the School of Enchantment, the School of Illusion, the School of Evocation, the School of Necromancy, and the School of Transformation. There's also a small school of magic, and that is the School of General Magic. Beverly blurted out without thinking. Without a doubt, she had firmly remembered the introduction of the first half of the book. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to react so quickly. Absolutely correct. Excellent. It seems that your learning progress has exceeded my expectations. Next, I'll ask you some more difficult questions. Andre clapped his hands and praised her generously. Now he finally understood why the system had marked 15 points of intelligence. This meant that the girl in front of him had an intelligence level that far exceeded that of an adult. He absolutely couldn't treat Beverly like an ordinary child. After all, there was a huge gap between a genius and an ordinary person. Teaching according to the talent was the best choice. The little lowly didn't realize that her performance had attracted the attention of her teacher. She excitedly opened her arms and shouted, "Come on, as long as it's the knowledge in the book, I'll definitely be able to answer it." Andre smiled and pinched the girl's little nose. "Don't be in a hurry to brag. The next question won't be as simple as the previous one. Let me ask you, during the process of casting an arcane spell, what do hand gestures and incantations represent?" Hand gestures represent the direction of the flow of one's magic power, while incantations resonate with the magic elements in the air. When the two are combined together, the spell will be cast. After stammering for a long time, Beverly finally gave the correct answer. Obviously, she couldn't completely understand these abstract and profound things, so she didn't have a deep memory of them. Therefore, she had to ponder for a while before she could answer the question. However, for a little girl who wasn't even 10 years old, it wasn't easy for her to reach this stage. If she had mastered the entire book in one go, Andre would have suspected that she was a transmigrator like him, and that she had a cheating device. Normally speaking, a mage was not a profession that could be developed quickly. Not only did one need to accumulate a large amount of knowledge, but one also had to learn to be cautious. This was because the power of arcane magic was simply too dangerous. The slightest carelessness could lead to disastrous consequences. They weren't like warriors. As long as their physical fitness was good enough, they could immediately put on armor and go out into the wild with weapons in hand to fight monsters after a few months of rigorous training. There wasn't much technical content. The real thing needed to be comprehended through intense battles. As long as one could persevere and survive, there would always be improvements. However, mages were different. All of their power was accumulated through a long period of learning. Whether it was the ability to cast spells or the way of thinking, they had already taken shape before they set foot on the first battle. What they needed to do in the future was to repeatedly revise and make them reach a more perfect state. Generally speaking, the most important period for a mage was the apprenticeship period. During this period, they would follow their mentor to learn all the basics, including the movements of casting spells, the tone of incantation, the measures to deal with unexpected situations, the spells they preferred, the choice of magic items, and even the final specialization. They would be deeply rooted like habits. In the future, unless there was a major change, it would be very difficult to change them in their lifetime. Although Andre, who had become a mage through cheating, didn't go through this process, he could imagine how heavy the responsibility of a mentor was. Therefore, he had always been thinking about what kind of ideas to instill in his apprentices. Should they continue to maintain a mysterious and lofty attitude like traditional mages, or should they completely follow the pragmatism and use whatever was effective, regardless of whether it was magic or physical means? As a dabbler, he couldn't tell which of the two was more beneficial to the development of mages. After all, not everyone had a cheat that allowed them to gain experience and level up by completing tasks and killing enemies. Therefore, in this aspect, he could only cross the river by feeling the stones and try his best not to touch the more sensitive parts. In the following time, Andre asked some questions that were not too difficult but still required some thinking. Some of them were reluctantly answered by Beverly, but most of them were pondered for a long time and finally shook her head helplessly. It was obvious that she had a firm grasp of the knowledge that had been memorized by rote, but the parts that required deep understanding and thinking were not enough, especially when it came to arcane magic, such as planes, crystal walls, the universe, magical elements, and so on, her knowledge was still only on paper. It would probably take a long time for her to completely digest it. Taking advantage of the fact that dinner hadn't started yet, Andre answered some of her questions with great interest. At the same time, he also taught the little lowly how to meditate as a mage. This was the first step to becoming an apprentice. Only by accumulating a certain amount of mana through meditation could one obtain their first level 0 spell slot. After obtaining the level 0 spell slot, an apprentice would be a true apprentice. In Linton City, the number of such apprentices was about 250 to 300. Most of them were engaged in the production of magical items and potions, which was equivalent to being the assistants of official mages. Most of these apprentices would stop at this for their entire lives. Only a small minority of less than 5% would be able to learn and see more in daily life until they accumulated enough experience to be promoted to an official level 1 mage. To a certain extent, the Mage Association was actually using the strategy of casting a wide net in an attempt to select talents from the commoners. Then, through self-study, they would increase the number of mages in the city as much as possible. Of course, in the process of learning, these children would also be the coolies, test subjects, and tools to vent the desires of official mages. Basically, 1 out of 10 of them would die from accidents or suicide. Even though President Boris had repeatedly emphasized that the apprentices should not die so easily, there were not many who actually listened to him. Although it sounded a little sad and cruel, there were still countless commoners who saw it as an opportunity to change their fate. They fought to send their children in, hoping that they would one day be able to stand out among their peers. In comparison, the situation of the nobles was much better. They could announce to the association that they would be able to hire mages to teach their children. Although they had to pay an exorbitant tuition fee, it was nothing to the wealthy upper-class nobles. Their fleets only needed to make a round trip to earn a large profit. Therefore, a lesson only cost a few hundred gold coins. They only needed to sell some luxury goods. Chapter 92. Aurère's hierarchy was rather strict. Coupled with the monopoly of knowledge and power, the commoners had no chance of making a comeback. They could only strive desperately to pursue an unreachable dream. In fact, Linton City was already considered a relatively civilized place. Many big merchants could obtain noble titles by donating large sums of money to the city hall. Adventurers could also accumulate merits and obtain some opportunities to change their social class. In the interior, more kingdoms strictly adhered to the bloodline theory. Only those with noble blood could become nobles, and the commoners' only chance of promotion was through military merits. Those who could climb out of the mountains of corpses and seas of blood were few and far between. Most of them were tenants and farmers who were bound to the land for their entire lives. The Canteru Kingdom was actually such a country. The king would infect the land to the big nobles, and the big nobles would then infect the small nobles, and the small nobles would infect the feudal knights. The huge country was divided into countless small pieces. It seemed chaotic, but it was extremely stable. There were almost no rebellions. At most, there would be private wars between the nobles due to conflicts, but peace would soon be restored under the mediation of the aristocratic parliament. As for the commoners, they were just like Lonely Mountain Town in the past. They repeated the heavy manual labor day after day, and could only live a precarious life. Death and hunger were always around. Most people could only live to be in their 40s. It was extremely miserable. In this regard, Linton City was much better. Although the division between the two classes was still very serious, most of the civilians had enough to eat. That was why Andre was willing to stay behind. He wasn't sure if he would get angry and do something out of line when he returned to the Canteru Kingdom and saw the peasants who didn't have enough food to eat and clothes to cover their bodies. As a transmigrator, he needed a certain amount of time to adapt to the values and morals of this world. It was very different from the 21st century Earth. At the very least, he could ensure that he could control his emotions and not get angry when he saw something unfair. After all, after being in this city for so many days, Andre did not even have the courage to walk around the slave market. He was afraid that he would see the cruel scenes described in books, such as the slaves' mouths being pried open to see their teeth and so on. Because of the moral values he had established in his previous life, he could not accept to treat his own kind like livestock. The only thing he could do was to ignore them. After the sun had completely set, Elsa finally served dinner. First, there was a pot of delicious conch soup. The main dish was a whole roasted lamb that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Some expensive spices were sprinkled on it, and it constantly emitted a tempting aroma. In addition, there were mashed potatoes and stir-fried vegetables. It could be said that it was a combination of meat and vegetables, which was very appetizing at first glance. Andre, whose stomach was already rumbling with hunger, immediately cut off a large piece of mutton and ate it in big bites. Perhaps it was because of the large amount of activity, his appetite was particularly good today. He even ate 2 large spoonfuls of mashed potatoes, which he usually didn't like. Taflin Eunice didn't have the slightest awareness of being a slave. She also sat at the table and quickly stuffed food into her mouth. She looked like a reincarnated hungry ghost. It didn't take her long to finish an entire lamb leg. Her appetite was terrifying. However, her stomach didn't seem to be bulging at all. It was as if she had just eaten and digested it. This sumptuous meal took a full half an hour. In the end, there was only a little mutton and conch soup left. The rest of the food was completely eaten. Seeing this, Elsa exclaimed in surprise, "Wow, it seems that I have to prepare 4 times the usual amount of food in the future. Otherwise, it won't be enough." "No, there's no need for that. I just need extra nutrition today. That's why I ate so much. I'll be back to normal tomorrow." After saying that, Eunice swung her tail and jumped onto the sofa to lie down and sleep. Elsa turned her head and asked Andre in a low voice, "Really? She's not a monster, is she?" "Of course not. She's a human like us. It's just that she has the blood of a demon flowing in her body, so she's a little different. There's nothing to worry about," Andre replied, while wiping his mouth with a napkin. In his opinion, Eunice's body wouldn't be able to return to normal for half a month, so instead of worrying about her being a threat, it was better to worry about the spy hidden among the nobles. After all, he had ruined the other party's plans. If he didn't take revenge, the other party would definitely not let him go. After eating, Andre went straight to take a shower, then returned to his room to rest. It didn't take long for him to fall asleep. After a good sleep, Andre opened his eyes early the next morning. Perhaps it was because he was too tired, or perhaps it was because he had lost too much blood, but he didn't dream last night. At the same time, his wounds had healed well and were basically scabbing over. His HP had also recovered to 15 points, and at this rate, he would be completely healthy in 3 days. After taking off the white cloth wrapped around his hand, he pulled open the curtains and stretched his body. Looking at the busy scene outside the window, he muttered to himself, "It's the beginning of a new day. I hope the gold coins will arrive soon." The price of a level 3 magic scroll is not cheap. Level 0 spells cost 50 gold coins, level 1 100, level 2 200, level 3 400, level 4 800. The standard price of spells in Linton City could be said to be expensive, but that was basically the case in the coastal areas of the continent. In some inconvenient inland areas, the prices could be 15 to 30% more expensive, especially for magic scrolls above level 5. Even if one had the money, it would be difficult to buy them. Hence, Andre planned to complete all the spells below level 5 here, and at the same time raise his own level as a magus above level 10. In his plan, he didn't want to return to the Canteru Kingdom too early. After all, the conditions there weren't as good as the south, and magic resources were scarce. Moreover, the kingdom was founded on military might, so more emphasis was placed on the cultivation of warriors and feudal knights. The number of magi was pitifully low, and only the court magi who served the royal family were decent. Most importantly, he hadn't found a way to remove the secret imprint left by Ulysses on his forehead. It would be troublesome if someone recognized it. Andre didn't know that King Elroy and Court Magus Domite were already coveting the dark red spell book in his hands. It was rumored that Ulysses had grasped the location of a huge treasure, and the secret was hidden in the spell book. Chapter 93. The necromancer Ulysses Domer was far from being as simple as he looked. If he wasn't too careless, it was hard to say who would win in the end. He had invented many vicious spells in his life, especially in the area of mass destruction magic. Many people still tried the magic ritual of the Bloody New Year incident in private, eager to crack the terrible, suffocating effect. But it was a pity that all of this was completely covered up by the violent explosion, leaving only a spellbook that couldn't be opened at all. According to Andre's speculation, it would take at least a level 10 mage to crack the complicated spell lock, so it was basically impossible for him to do it in a short time. After dressing up, he directly opened the door and saw Small Eye flying around with a large piece of raw meat in its mouth. Elsa was chasing after it while shouting, "Little baddie, give me back the beef. I'll give it to you after I fry it." "Yes, eating raw meat will give you diarrhea. Spit it out." Beverly also helped her mother to shout. But apparently, Little Eyes didn't take these words to heart. With its razor-sharp teeth, it gobbled up the bloody beef and licked its lips as if it hadn't had enough yet. Seeing this scene, Andre couldn't help but smile and shake his head. He said, "It's okay. Let it eat as much as it wants. My magic pet is a branch of the beholder. It prefers fresh meat because the smell of blood and color make it more delicious." "I see." No wonder it was so excited when it saw me cutting the beef and ran away with a piece in its mouth. Elsa had a look of sudden realization on her face. She quickly ran back to the kitchen to get 2 more pieces of beef. Small Eyes didn't say anything. She flew over and swallowed the beef in a few bites. Then she wobbled back to the table and burped with satisfaction. It seemed that she was full. After all, the Pearl Eye was very small in size, only about 2 times the size of a normal person's head, so it didn't have a big appetite. If it was a real adult beholder, it could eat 90 kilograms of meat and several liters of blood in one meal, almost equivalent to an adult strongman. However, Andre knew that as his spellcasting level got higher and higher, Small Eye, as a magic pet, would also slowly evolve. If he could get his hands on some corpses of real beholders in the future, he might be able to transform Small Eye into a nightmare for all close combat professions. Of course, it was still too early to think about this. The challenge rating of an adult eye demon was 13, which meant that they would need at least 4 level 13 professions, and one of them had to be a spellcaster, such as a priest, a mage, a druid, a bard, or a warlock. Otherwise, even an army of hundreds of people would be wiped out. Normally, professionals above level 12 were the leaders or important figures of a faction. For example, the chief knight of Linton City, Anson, was level 5 as a warrior and level 7 as a knight, which added up to level 12. However, he was able to kill 30 to 50 elite soldiers in a single battle. If it was a commoner, then the number would be dozens of times higher, which showed how powerful he was. As for spellcasters, a level 12 priest was usually the chief priest or bishop of a church. They had level 6 divine spells and could even resurrect the dead at a heavy price. A level 12 mage also had level 6 arcane spells and could wipe out an entire army by himself. If they were given enough time to prepare, they could turn an entire city into a purgatory through a powerful magic ritual. For an opponent that required so many powerful people to gather together to defeat, there was no doubt that the beholders were powerful. Even the tyrant dragons in the sky had to be careful in front of them. Otherwise, they would quickly become the beholder's food. After a simple wash, Elsa served a very nutritious breakfast. Everyone had a piece of fried beef, an egg, freshly baked bread, a cup of goat's milk, butter, and jam in the middle of the table. Everyone could spread the food according to their tastes. It was very thoughtful. Not bad. Your cooking is getting better and better. Andre did not hesitate to praise after tasting a small piece of beef. This was because he did not feel any bitterness on his tongue at all. It felt as if he had returned to Earth. One had to know that the salt in this world either came from boiling seawater or from salt mines. There were many impurities in it, so adding it to food would more or less make the taste worse. Hee, I used pure white salt from the salt lake in Rhine City this time. A small jar costs 60 silver coins. If it weren't for you, a mage, I wouldn't be willing to buy such expensive condiments. After saying that, Elsa inadvertently revealed a happy smile. No hunger, no cold, no bullying, and with her daughter by her side all day, she was very satisfied with her current life. She even felt as if she had returned to the time when she was a young girl and was doted on. Of course, the young widow would never say this out loud. She was very clear about the difference in status between the two of them, so she only hoped to maintain this relationship. As for the rest, she would just let nature take its course. Hearing that a small jar of salt cost 60 silver coins, Andre was shocked. He quickly swallowed the salt in his mouth and asked, "So expensive? Aren't we near the sea? Why do we have to buy salt from other places?" He used to live in a lonely mountain town, so he could still understand that the high price of salt was due to the inconvenience of transportation. However, if the price of salt by the sea was so expensive, then he could no longer remain calm. He had to get to the bottom of this. Elsa held her sharp chin and smiled charmingly as she explained, "Do you think you can get enough salt by the sea? Our city has 100,000 people living in it. In addition to the merchants, sailors, and adventurers that pass by, the salt that is boiled is not enough. Moreover, the surrounding villages and towns also consume a lot of salt, so it's not strange that we have to buy it from outside. You must have been too focused on learning magic and never noticed these trivial things in life." Obviously, she thought that Andre was one of those rich kids who came from a great noble family and did not know how expensive daily necessities were. Andre was a little unconvinced. He curled his lips and retorted, "That's because they're too stupid. Then why don't we dry?" Speaking of this, he suddenly remembered that since no one in this world had discovered the method of drying salt in seawater, he could make a lot of money by relying on this method. In particular, table salt was a daily necessity and consumable. It was completely equivalent to an inexhaustible gold mine. Chapter 94. Back on Earth, the price of salt was as high as silver in Europe. Before that, the price of salt was almost the same as that of silver. The closer one was to the inland, the higher the price. However, the situation in Oleil was obviously much worse. Most of the area was still in a state similar to the Dark Middle Ages. As long as the secret of salt was kept a secret, the money for studying arcane magic would not be a problem. "What were you talking about?" Elsa asked, blinking. She could feel that he didn't finish his sentence, so she was a little curious about what he was going to say next. "No, it's nothing. I suddenly thought of a business that can make a lot of money. It's all thanks to you." Andre wiped his mouth and stood up. He held the young widow's face and kissed her fiercely on the lips. Elsa's body tensed up from the sudden attack. She didn't even notice that the fork in her hand had fallen to the ground. She only felt that her mind was blank, and she couldn't exert any strength at all. It was as if she was about to melt. After a full minute, Andre ended the kiss. He then kissed her forehead and said excitedly, "You're really an angel of blessing. When we make money, I'll definitely give you a share." Hearing this, the young widow's face was instantly covered with a blush. Her eyes were a little dazed, and she looked like she was about to faint. At this moment, she felt an unprecedented happiness. If it weren't for her daughter, she would have jumped on the handsome young man in front of her and let out all the bitterness she had all these years. Unfortunately, she couldn't do that now. Thus, she secretly pinched her thigh and forced herself to calm down. Then, she took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Hee, then I'll wait for your good news. Of course, I promise to give you a big surprise when the time comes." Andre, who was in a state of excitement, didn't notice Elsa's abnormality. He gave her a warm hug again, and then waved to the little lowly in Eunice. "Let's go. We have a lot to do today. Hurry up." 10 minutes later, he was walking on a street with a tiefling, a little girl less than 10 years old, and the magical pet little eyes. They attracted a lot of attention along the way. Even the patrolling soldiers were alerted. If it weren't for the badge of the Mage Association hanging on their chests, they would have rushed up to arrest them. Of course, even if they were wearing the badge of the Mage Association, it did not dispel the suspicion of the patrolling guards. They followed them from a distance, afraid that something might go wrong. Just like that, with a dozen free bodyguards, the group successfully entered the Mage Tower. The moment they passed through the illusion, the guards were tailing them all heaved a sigh of relief and turned around to return to their patrol area. The patrolling soldiers of Linton City had gone through a series of training before taking up their posts. They were very clear on how to deal with the mages. In short, they were told not to interfere with the mages' actions. All they needed to do was to follow behind and deal with the aftermath. In fact, there had been many cases of enraged mages attacking the patrols in this city. As a result, the guards were somewhat traumatized and were afraid that they would lose their lives if they weren't careful. After reporting his identity to the statue at the door, Andre passed through the narrow passage and arrived at the inner hall. Just as he was about to take a closer look at who was there, Gavin Lauren walked towards him. He glanced meaningfully at Eunice, and then quickly put on a smile that he thought was friendly and made a mage's bow. "Good morning, Mage Andre. I've been waiting for you here for a whole hour. I have to say, you did something that made everyone sit up and take notice of you yesterday. I checked the corpses overnight and found that the muscles of the two charred corpses were very sturdy. One of them should be a warrior around level 10, and the other around level 8. Even if I were to meet them, it wouldn't bode well for me." At this point, the eagle-nosed mage's eyes suddenly revealed a burning gaze. "And not only did you get rid of these two guys, you also used poison and a dagger to kill all the pirates on the ship. I heard from the rescued women that you even defeated a demon. What an unimaginable talent for battle. I think you should be a real battle mage. How about we be friends?" "Just friends?" Andre narrowed his eyes and asked. He was a little unsure of the other's intentions. After all, this was the second time this guy had tried to sound him out, and he didn't know what tricks he was up to. Add to that the internal conflict that had erupted before, and one couldn't help but think of a conspiracy. Of course it's not just friends. I think battle mages like us should unite and break the monopoly of power that those traditional mages have. Don't you think they're a bunch of stubborn old antiques, and that it's time to sweep them away into the trash heap of history?" Gavin Lauren used a fanatical tone to tempt him. Perhaps this method was very attractive to those young mages who liked to break the rules of the city, but it had no effect on Andre, who had lived 2 lifetimes. He shook his head without hesitation and refused. "Sorry, your proposal isn't attractive at all. In my opinion, any radical action is a sign of irresponsibility and will lead to disastrous consequences. I abide by the neutral path, neither too forward nor too conservative. Your philosophy is at odds with mine." As soon as he finished speaking, an old mage with a white beard walked in from behind and shouted, "Well said. Get lost, Gavin Lauren. Don't use your fallacious reasoning to bewitch the young. Don't get carried away just because you have a bit of strength. You're still far from becoming a true master." "Old dog." "Repeat what you just said." Gavin Lauren narrowed his eyes, his entire body emitting a chilling, killing intent. However, this obviously didn't scare the old mage. His beard curled up slightly as he sneered and cursed. "I told you to get lost. Is there a problem?" Seeing that the two of them were about to fight, Andre immediately pulled the little lowly and Eunice back a dozen or so meters, far away from where the battle could affect them. He was all too clear about the destructive power of powerful spells, and was afraid that something would happen to his people. Gavin Lauren's personality had always been aggressive. When he heard someone mocking him, he raised his hand and shot out a bolt of lightning without another word. This was a standard rank 3 Arcane spell, and because he didn't make any movements or chant any incantations, it could be concluded that it was the effect of a magic item. Chapter 95. Oomph. Is this all you've got? The old wizard wasn't someone to be trifled with either. After mocking him, he immediately cast a spherical barrier around himself, blocking the lightning outside. Without a doubt, he had activated some sort of magical item. Gavin Lauren pulled out a dark green staff from his waist and said with a sinister smile, "Old dog, bark as much as you can while you're still breathing. I'll send you to meet the Grim Reaper very soon." "Oomph, arrogant brat. You can't hurt me with your pitiful level of magic. When your magic runs out, I'll slowly crush every bone in your body." As he spoke, the old wizard pulled out a fiery red staff in the shape of a dragon's claw from his sleeve. A large ruby was embedded at the top, and one could tell at a glance that it wasn't cheap. As the smell of gunpowder between the two grew stronger, a battle of magic was about to begin. They obviously hated each other, so if they were to fight, they wouldn't show any mercy. It would definitely end with one of them dying. At this critical moment, Chairman Boris kicked open the door and rushed out, raising his hand to cast a level 3 arcane spell, Dispel Magic. This arcane spell was one of the most practical spells. Moreover, it would become stronger as the mage's rank increased. This was especially true when used by a high-ranked mage against a low-ranked mage. It would instantly strip the opponent of all their defensive spells. A blinding white light flashed, and the old wizard's barrier disappeared in an instant. The wizard's armor that Gavin Lauren had secretly cast on his body also disappeared without a trace. The difference in level between the two of them and the chairman was quite obvious, so they had lost all their defenses. However, Chairman Boris was furious at this moment and had no intention of letting the two of them go. In a very short time, he completed an incantation and cast a spell, turning himself into a fierce man with bulging muscles. He rushed forward with the momentum of a fierce tiger, picking up the two powerful wizards like they were little chicks. He glared at them and roared loudly, "You dare ignore my warning. Do you want to die? Say something. Say something if you want to die. I'll be happy to wring your necks. Don't think that I can't bear to kill you just because you're a level 7 wizard. In Linton City, all spellcasters must abide by the rules. Otherwise, I don't mind using 1 or 2 corpses to warn everyone." The president was indeed the president. In just a few seconds, he had used his unparalleled strength to suppress the private fight. From the looks of it, the spells he had used were somewhat of a transformation type, especially the last spell that had turned himself into a powerful warrior. It was definitely a rank 6 arcane spell, or else it would not have been able to produce such a powerful effect. One had to know that his movements and muscle strength had completely surpassed the standard of a level 12 melee professional. It was as if he was a warrior who had experienced countless battles of life and death. This scene not only stunned Eunice and Beverly, but even Andre's heart was in turmoil, completely subverting the definition of a mage. He had originally thought that mages relied on various powerful spells to eliminate enemies from afar, or to control their opponents through various means. But now, he had a new understanding. Mages could actually be like warriors, picking up weapons to charge and break through enemy lines. They were not inferior to melee professionals of the same level. No wonder President Boris had trained his body to be so robust. It turned out that he was an out-and-out melee wizard, a true violent maniac. In just a few seconds, Gavin Lauren could not bear the large hand on his neck that was like an iron clamp. He squeezed out a sentence from his throat. I was wrong. Please spare me for the last time." Cough, cough, cough. "I was wrong too. I promise there won't be a next time." The old wizard was even more unbearable. He coughed violently while loudly begging for mercy. Mages were originally a profession that relied on high intelligence, so there were basically no fools. They knew when to be arrogant and when to be patient. They often valued their own lives, so as long as there was a chance to live, they would not let it go, even if they had to do something outrageous. Remember, this is the last time. If I see people from the two factions fighting again, no matter who it is, I will make an example out of you two first. After saying this, President Boris directly threw the two of them to the door like rag dolls and roared again, "Get lost. Now get lost. Don't let me see you for 10 days. Gavin Lauren and the unknown old wizard hurriedly got up from the ground. They did not dare to stay for a moment and rushed out of the mage tower in a sorry state. Perhaps they were the leaders of a faction outside, but in front of the president, They were like weak little girls without the slightest ability to resist. After watching the two of them completely disappear from the illusion, President Boris directly threw out a sentence, "Follow me." Then he walked back to his room without looking back. He was obviously not in a good mood now. His two eyes were full of dissatisfaction, and his whole body was exuding an aura that did not allow strangers to come close. Just a little closer would make people feel suffocated. If possible, Andre did not want to get too close at this time, but he obviously had no choice, so he could only take a deep breath, turn around, and said to the little lowly and Teflon, "Don't go anywhere, just wait for me here. Don't cause trouble. I believe you just saw how dangerous it is here. Don't worry, I'm not stupid enough to act wildly in a tower full of wizards." Eunice was the first to express her attitude. As a half-demon who had been struggling at the bottom of society for a long time, she could feel the danger of the battle more than most ordinary people, especially the dazzling white lightning. If she missed even a little bit, it would immediately cause terrible consequences. Therefore, she did not intend to cause any trouble here. "Teacher, I swear I will stand here obediently and wait for you to come back." The little lowly also patted her chest to make a promise. After hearing the two's answer, Andre let out a sigh of relief and walked into the room with his magic pet. He knew that the president must have something important to say to him, so he was a little nervous walking into the room. Andre closed the door behind him, then took 2 steps forward and respectfully bowed. "Master, I wonder what you want me to do?" Ever since he saw how powerful the president was, he had put away his careless attitude. It was because the books mentioned that mages who chose to specialize in transmutation were usually more emotional, especially when they were in a fit of anger. They would become dangerous. Chapter 96. As a matter of fact, most mages would be influenced by their own personality when they chose their specialization. Those who chose the defense specialization were usually cold and sensitive. They had a strong sense of self-protection and would choose to strike first when they felt threatened. Those who chose the incantation specialization were usually arrogant, dominant, and possessive. They were used to giving orders and expecting everyone to follow them unconditionally. Those who chose the prophecy specialization were wise and alert. They had a strong sense of curiosity and liked to dig out other people's secrets in privacy. Those who chose the evocation specialization were reckless and liked to use the simplest, most direct, and most violent way to solve problems or to kill enemies. Those who chose the enchantment specialization were the standard two-faced people. They looked kind and humble on the surface, but they were schemers in their bones. They liked to play with other people's feelings and psychology. Those who chose the illusion specialization liked to lie and cheat, although sometimes they just wanted to play prank for fun. Those who chose the necromancy specialization looked gloomy and depressed. They did not care about the people around them and were completely cold to the bone. It could be said that the magic specialization was closely related to a mage's personality. To some extent, it could even show a person's subconscious. Although there were 1 or 2 exceptions, most of the time, the accuracy was more than 90%. As a smart person, Andre felt that it was best to be honest at this time. So after greeting the president, he stood there with his head lowered and patiently waited for the president to speak. He did not want to be like the other two who refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit and be taught a lesson in the end. Boris sat on the chair and took a few deep breaths. Finally, he calmed down. He glanced at the pearl eye that was wandering around the room and forced a smile. "Is that your magic pet?" "Yes, it's called Little Eye. It's a kind of beholder that hasn't fully developed. I got it as a gift on the day I became an official mage." Andre made up a big lie without even blinking his eyes. Ever since he knew what kind of power a devil represented in this world, he quickly came up with an excuse, which was to push all the inconvenient questions to Ulysses. After all, Ulysses was already dead and could be used as a scapegoat. To give a small beholder to his apprentice as a gift, your mentor must be very powerful. "I really hope I can meet him and ask him some questions about magic research," President Boris said with a hint of envy. Andre did not know if this was a test or not, so he deliberately put on a troubled expression and sighed slightly. Sigh. My supervisor only focuses on his own research, so he never sees outsiders. And his personality is very strange. Sometimes he even uses living people for experiments, so you'd better give up on this idea. His words were half true and half false. After all, Ulysses' personality was like that, so no one could find any flaws in his words. Boris's eyes lit up when he heard that he was experimenting on living humans. He immediately asked, "May I ask, what is your mentor's specialization and what is the direction of his research?" Necromancy specialization. His research topic is immortality. Andre, who was planning to fabricate an image of a mysterious mentor, did not hesitate to reveal some of Ulysses' secrets. Because the water in Lincoln City was too deep, he needed to make the enemies in the dark cautious. A powerful mentor who did not even exist could obviously play an unexpected role. Immortality. Boris was shocked and jumped up from his chair. Oh gods, that's a forbidden field. On the Oleal continent, there were a few types of magic research that were regarded as untouchable taboos, and immortality was one of them. It was said that when the war between the gods broke out 600 years ago, countless powerful mortals joined in. They were like madmen, killing the gods and dissecting their corpses in an attempt to unravel the secret of immortality so that they could have the same power and immortality as the gods. However, it was a pity that these guys failed in the end. They were all killed by the combined forces of the angry gods. From then on, anyone who researched the secret of immortality would be viewed with hostility by the gods' churches. The good gods were still fine. At most, they would not treat them well. However, the neutral and evil gods preferred to use violent means to exterminate them. Of course, there was a prerequisite, and that was that the researcher could not be too powerful. Otherwise, all the churches would choose to ignore them. The nature of bullying the weak and fearing the strong was obvious. Boris was shocked because of this. Anyone who dared to research the topic of immortality was either a lunatic who was not afraid of death, or a powerful mage with terrifying power. In his eyes, a person who could train a 14-year-old formal mage naturally could not be a lunatic. The result was obvious. Andre noticed the constantly changing expression on the president's face. The corner of his mouth rose slightly, and a faint smile flashed across his face. He bowed slightly and said, "Yes, my teacher is researching immortality. He is trying to create a potion that combines the three elements of regeneration, cold, and death. When people drink it, they can get rid of their dependence on the body and continue to live in another form." Boris sucked in a breath of cold air. Although he did not personally participate in necromancy spells or concocting potions, he had read a lot of related books, so he knew what these three elements represented. In ancient times, when a magic civilization was at its most prosperous, powerful mages invented a way to transform themselves into undead, enjoying endless life and powerful spellcasting abilities. The undead creatures transformed by this method were called liches, but they had been lost a long time ago. The necromancy faction specialized in and had the ability to research the method of transforming liches. Combining these 2 points, Boris quickly imagined the image of a white-haired, extremely cold mage. At the same time, the way he looked at Andre changed. After all, the temptation of immortality was too great for mortals, especially for selfish mages. Almost every one of them wanted to live forever and continue to study the mysteries of magic. After a short silence for a few minutes, he shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Well, it seems that your teacher is already at the forefront of the path of magic. I hope his research can be successful. But I have to remind you, don't talk about this topic with others, or you will be targeted immediately. You have to know that the temptation of immortality is too great, and it is hard to guarantee that no one will take the risk." Chapter 97. Don't worry, I know what's important and won't say anything. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Andre secretly let out a sigh of relief. He could finally rest easy for a few days. After the chairman knew about this, he would quickly warn the other members of the association to stop harassing him. Similarly, the hidden traitor would have to carefully consider the consequences before taking revenge. It's good that you understand. Here are 5,000 gold coins. Congratulations on completing this month's mission. Remember, no matter what they say, don't get involved in the conflicts between the factions. It won't do you any good. I heard that you obtain a manor. I personally recommend that you stay there for a while and come back next month. After saying this, Chairman Boris placed a bag of gold coins on the table. Andre, who was already so poor that he could barely afford to eat, hurriedly picked up the heavy bag and nodded with a smile. Thank you very much for your reminder. After I'm done with the matters in the city, I'll go to the manor and stay there for half a month. He didn't count the amount of gold coins because the Mage Association couldn't be stingy in this aspect. Otherwise, according to the selfish nature of most mages, once they found out that they had been cheated, the whole association wouldn't be far from collapsing. Go do your thing. I still have some official business to take care of. After saying this, Chairman Boris waved his hand and sat down to review the thick pile of parchment on the table. Andre silently bowed and quietly walked out of the room. He closed the door behind him and gestured to the little Lowly and Eunice who were sitting on the chairs to calm down. After that, he went straight to the basement. He was in urgent need of new spells and materials, especially for level 3 arcane spells. Until now, he still had none. Arriving at the entrance of the warehouse, he directly ordered the apprentice guarding the door. Give me scrolls for the level 3 arcane spells Stinking Cloud, Wind Creation, Fireball, Haste, Lightning, Flight, and Magic Dispel. Also, scrolls for the level 2 arcane spells Mirror, Glittering Dust, Bull Strength, Featherweight, and Arrow Protection. Also, scroll for the level 1 arcane spells Metamorphosis, Shield, Counter Enemy, and Charm Human. The young apprentice was dumbfounded by the huge purchase of the scrolls. However, he quickly regained his composure and did some calculations in his head. Mr. Mage, you have to pay 4,200 gold coins. Give me the magic scroll first. Here are 5,000 gold coins. Take your time counting. After saying so, Andre tossed the leather pouch onto the table. In fact, he had seen the list of magic scrolls the last time he was here, so he knew what spells were in the warehouse. He had also sorted them out, so he could directly report the types of spells. As for the price, he had calculated it in advance. After buying the scrolls, he would have exactly 800 gold coins left. When he went back later, he would pay off the treatment fees he owed to the temple. When the poor apprentice saw the pouch full of gold coins, he immediately revealed a bitter smile. He quickly ran into the warehouse and took out a dozen magic scrolls, then began the painful task of counting the gold coins. It had to be known that a leather pouch was not a chest. The gold coins that were neatly arranged could be easily counted. In this world where there were no accurate weighing instruments, there was no other way except to count them one by one. Of course, if the apprentice in front of him had memorized the level 0 arcane spell magic trick, he could have imitated a small trick like a spiritual force counter. He could have directly scanned all the gold coins in the pouch and obtained the answer in an instant. Unfortunately, he didn't think of this. He silently squatted there and meticulously counted the coins. By the time the apprentice finished his work, Andre had finished all the level 1 and 2 magic scrolls. He directly took the remaining 800 gold coins and walked out of the Mage Association's tower with the little Lowly and Tavelin, completely ignoring the apprentice's resentful gaze. When they were about 50 meters away from the Temple of the Goddess of Dawn, Eunice suddenly stopped for some reason. She had a strange expression on her face, then she lowered her voice and said, "You guys go in, I'll just stand here and wait. The knights guarding the door won't allow anyone with demon blood to get close. Not to mention, I've done many cruel things. When I get close to the door, a strong evil aura will appear on my body. In that case, I'll have the familiar accompany you here," Andre said as he gave Little Eye an order. Mages had a close connection with their familiars. As long as the distance between them was less than 1.5 kilometers, They could sense each other's location at any time. That was why he had little I keep an eye on Tavelin. On one hand, it was to prevent any disturbances, and on the other hand, it was to prevent Tavelin from escaping. Eunice gently swung her tail and stood in place without saying a word. She didn't show any emotion, nor did she do anything. She just stared at the statue of the former goddess of dawn, Lucia. Andre could feel that she was hiding some secret in her heart, but considering that it was personal, he didn't ask too much. He held the little lowly's hand and walked into the magnificent temple. As usual, there was an endless stream of people who came to pray and donate every day. From nobles and merchants to commoners and beggars, as long as they didn't have any dirt on them and their clothes were enough to cover them, they could enter and leave the temple freely. It didn't matter if they didn't have a single copper coin on them and their clothes were full of patches. It had to be said that the ideas promoted by this goddess were really good. Although it was a little too naive and idealistic, for most people, whether it was healthy exercise, keeping one's body clean, a positive and optimistic spirit, or the pursuit of light and kindness, all of them were very useful without exception. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that it was popular. Of course, in Andre's eyes, there was another big bright spot in the temple, and that was the young and beautiful priests. Many of the nobles obviously didn't come for faith. The only thing they wanted to do was to attract the attention of the beautiful women, then have a meal together, chat, and do some healthy exercise in their own houses after dark. At this moment, he really wanted to know how the goddess felt about the men blatantly hunting in her sanctum. Would she want to punish these blasphemers with lightning? Mage Andre, why are you free today? Did you get hurt again, or are you planning to return the gold coins you owe? When they were about 50 meters away from the temple of the goddess of dawn, Eunice suddenly stopped for some reason. A strange expression appeared on her face. Then she lowered her voice and said, "You guys go in. I'll just stand here and wait. The knights guarding the door won't allow anyone with demon blood to get close. Besides, I've done a lot of cruel things. As soon as I get close to the door, a strong evil light will appear on my body. In that case, I'll let my familiar accompany you here," Andre said as he gave Little Eye an order. Mages had a close connection with their familiars. As long as the distance between them was less than 1.5 kilometers, they could sense each other's location at any time. Therefore, he let Little Eye keep an eye on Taffrin. On one hand, it was to prevent a riot, and on the other hand, it was to prevent Taffrin from escaping. Eunice gently swung her tail and stood there silently. She didn't show any emotion, nor did she do anything. She just kept staring at the statue of the former goddess of dawn, Lucia. Andre could feel that she was hiding some secret in her heart, but considering that it was personal, he didn't ask much. He took the little lowly's hand and walked into the magnificent temple. As usual, there was an endless stream of people who came to pray and donate every day. From nobles and merchants to commoners and beggars. As long as there was no dirt on their body and their clothes were enough to cover their body, they could enter and leave the temple freely. It didn't matter if they didn't have a single copper coin on them, and their clothes were full of patches. It had to be said that the ideology promoted by this goddess was really good. Although it was a little too naive and idealistic, for most people, whether it was healthy exercise, maintaining a clean body, a positive and optimistic spirit, the pursuit of light and kindness, and so on, without exception, were all very useful. Therefore, it was not surprising that it was widely welcomed. Of course, in Andre's eyes, there was another big bright spot in the temple, and that was the young and beautiful priests. Many nobles obviously didn't come for faith. The only thing they wanted to do was to attract the attention of the beautiful women, then have a meal together, chat, and do some exercise in their own houses after dark. At this moment, he really wanted to know how the goddess felt about the men blatantly hunting in her sanctum. Would she want to punish these blasphemers with lightning? Mage Andre, why are you free today? Did you get hurt again, or are you planning to return the gold coins you owe? As a pleasant voice sounded behind him, a mature woman in her early 30s walked out from the corner. She was none other than the priest who had healed Andre twice. Chapter 98. I'm here to return the treatment fee. Here's 800 gold coins. We're even now. Andre handed over the leather pouch and turned to leave. He was in a hurry to return to his residence to learn those powerful rank 3 arcane spells, so he didn't want to waste a single minute. But before he could take 2 steps, the female priest immediately shouted, "Please wait. I have something to discuss with you." Although Andre didn't want to waste any time with this beautiful woman who had taken advantage of him, he considered that he might have to come here again in the future for treatment. So he could only patiently turn around and pretend to be a gentleman as he smiled and asked, "Please speak. What is it? Try to keep it short. I'm in a hurry." The female priest could hear the perfunctory tone in his voice and immediately rolled her eyes flirtatiously. "All right, then I'll keep it short. A while ago, we hired adventurers to explore a ruin deep in the forest near the border. They found that the situation inside seemed a little strange, so we want to go take a look. We just happen to need a mage to help us search. What benefit can I get?" Andre didn't have any intention of wasting time and directly asked for benefits. In his eyes, the church had made so much money from him, and he could finally recoup some of it. More importantly, completing the mission would give him a large amount of experience points. If the mission is successfully completed, all the treatment you receive from the church will be half price. At the same time, you can buy some healing potions and blessings. Apart from that, everything related to arcane spells in this exploration will belong to you. The female priest didn't hesitate and immediately rejected the conditions of the church. Obviously, she was very clear about the personalities of mages. Apart from a few idealists, most of them were completely selfish. They wouldn't easily accept a job without enough benefits. Half-price treatment? Andre rubbed his chin and thought for a moment before nodding. "No problem, but I have a few additional conditions. First, I want detailed information about the underground city. Second, your treatment during the exploration must be free. Third, I need to have enough say in the team. If a life-threatening battle occurs, I can choose to withdraw." As a person who had lived for 2 lifetimes, he had long since engraved the word caution firmly into his bones. He would never play around with his own life. Unless he was forced to the edge of a cliff, he would definitely take the initiative to stay away from danger. The priestess did not show any anger or disgust when she heard such harsh conditions. Instead, she nodded happily and said, "No problem. We hired you to solve the magic puzzles and traps that might appear in the dungeon. The temple will send enough combat power to you. Let's get to know each other again." "My name is Crystal, and I'm the person in charge of this operation. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Crystal." Andre shook her hand gently. As the saying goes, you don't know if you don't grasp it, but once you do, you'll be shocked. This beautiful woman's hands were not as tender and smooth as he had imagined. Instead, they were full of calluses, and her grip strength was frighteningly strong. It was almost the same as Serena's, who was a feudal knight. "Are you surprised?" Crystal's lips curled up slightly as she asked with a smug smile. Andre sighed helplessly and said, "Sigh, Ma, could you please let go of my hand? It's already numb. If you continue, it might break." He did not expect a priestess to have such great strength. From the bulging muscles hidden under her sleeves, she was definitely not much weaker than a warrior. "It's just a joke. Don't mind it. You have to know that we are not as delicate as you think. Not only do we have to pray and study the scriptures every day, we also have to wear armor and train our skills so that we can be of use when needed. Don't look at how easy it is now. When the monsters attacked a few years ago, every priestess killed at least 15 enemies. Also, I admire your cautiousness. A mage like you is the most reliable when exploring the dungeon." Then, Crystal let go of her hand and winked mischievously. Staring at his slightly reddened right hand, Andre did not know whether to laugh or cry. He had always thought that priestesses were like this, wearing beautiful robes and staying in the temple to spread the teachings of the church to the believers, heal the sick, and pray twice a day to receive divine spells. But who would have thought that the priestesses on Oliel were not like that at all? They were not much different from warriors. Not only could they wear armor and pick up weapons to fight, but they could also boost morale on the battlefield and bless their teammates with divine spells and blessings. They were basically omnipotent supermen. All right, perhaps in this magical world, the priestesses are the real super warriors, and the warriors are just cannon fodder. Andre secretly complained his heart. He moved his numb right hand and asked, "When is the departure time?" Crystal shrugged and replied, "The initial estimate is the middle of next month. I still have a lot of preparation work to do. After all, it's an underground city from 1,500 years ago. Also, according to the density of negative energy detected, we might encounter undead creatures. So, I have to prepare a large amount of holy water that contains divine power. If that's the case, please inform me 2 days before your departure. Also, send me detailed information about the dungeon. These are my current addresses. If I'm not in the dungeon, I'm definitely in a manor outside the dungeon." Andre casually cast a level 0 arcane spell, magic trick, and used his finger to write a string of words in the common language in the air. As his level increased, he became more familiar with low-level arcane spells. The time to memorize and learn them also decreased. It was not as strenuous as before. "I'll remember. Don't worry. I promise to send the relevant information to you a week before departure." Crystal understood the importance of preparation work, so she agreed without hesitation. She did not want to cause injuries or deaths during the exploration because of a small mistake. After all, exploring an ancient underground city was not an easy activity. Along the way, not only did they have to face all kinds of traps, there were also large amounts of undead and monsters. If they were unlucky enough, they might even encounter terrifying creatures like dragons and liches. Fortunately, the tomb they were exploring was not very old, so the chances of them appearing were relatively low. Even so, they could not let their guard down. Otherwise, a small mistake could put the whole team in danger. Chapter 99. Fortunately, the tomb they were exploring this time was not very old, so the probability of them appearing was quite low. But even so, they could not let their guard down. Otherwise, a small mistake could put the whole team in danger. "I'll take my leave first. See you next month." After getting a positive answer, Andre waved his hand with a smile and walked out of the temple with his own apprentice. He had clearly seen the message in his retina. "You have accepted the mission. Help the Temple of the Goddess of Dawn explore the ancient ruins. Difficulty, medium. Mission reward, 3,500 EXP. Because the difficulty of the mission is moderate, after completing the mission, you will be randomly rewarded with a low-level magic item. Note: this mission hides a huge secret. Please pay attention to collecting information." Although the EXP had decreased by more than half, Andre still felt quite satisfied. This time, the temple would take care of everything, so the risk was quite low. Plus, the reward of a magic item was quite good. Moreover, he could discover a huge secret, which might be related to the treasure or the secret chamber. Therefore, he was quite looking forward to this adventure. "Teacher, are you planning to explore outside the city?" Before walking out of the temple gate, the little lowly asked cutely, blinking her eyes. Looking at her cute appearance, Andre could not help but gently touch the girl's long blonde hair. He smiled and nodded. "Yes, didn't you hear just now? In the middle of next month, I will follow the priests and warriors of the goddess of dawn, Lucia, to explore the underground city in the border forest. At that time, I will be out for a week or 2. You have to be good at home and persist in meditation every day. You must not be lazy, understand?" Beverly's 2 little eyes rolled around, and no one knew what she was thinking. After a few seconds, she bit her lips and continued to ask, "Can you bring me along? I have lived for so long, but I have not seen the world outside the city walls." "Bring you along?" Andre looked at the girl's eyes that were full of desire, and his heart was slightly touched, but he immediately dismissed the idea. "No, exploring the underground city is not a joke. You have not mastered a level 0 arcane spell, and you can't even use magic scrolls. You must not leave the protection of the city. The outside world is very dangerous, especially for a little guy like you. So you're saying that as long as I can become a true apprentice and grasp the power of the arcane arts, I'll be able to venture outside the city walls. The little lowly clearly didn't give up. Instead, she found a loophole in his words and continued to press on. It seemed that she really wanted to see what it was like outside the city walls. Andre didn't have the heart to refuse his apprentice's wish, so he sighed helplessly. Sigh? All right, as long as you can become an official apprentice, I'll take you to the forest for a walk. He knew very well that it might be dangerous to do so, but it was much better than killing a child's curious nature. After all, for a mage, curiosity and thirst for knowledge were two very important attributes. The former determined the breadth of magic they could learn, while the latter represented how much potential they had in the future. In fact, the power of the arcane arts was a type of experience that was summed up through observation, research, analysis, understanding, learning, and application. It was equivalent to the natural science of this magical world. It wasn't like the divine spells of the priests, which were bestowed by the gods, or like the druids, which were naturally reciprocated. Instead, it came from the omnipresent magical energy. The users of the arcane arts stored a portion of it in their own bodies, and when they needed it, they could resonate with their incantations and complex gestures, allowing their own magic to induce the surrounding magical energy to form a spell before finally releasing it. It could be said that all the spells and magic rituals of today couldn't be separated from this category, and the spells that the mages of today use were also the result of the ancient mages' research and exploration. Ever since the end of the War of the Gods 600 years ago, the level of magic in the whole of Olyre had plummeted. It was very rare to hear of someone being able to invent new spells, and a large amount of knowledge had caused even the improvement of some magic rituals to become incomparably difficult. However, Andre knew that Ulysses had once invented a few vicious rituals and magic, and it was precisely because he had a brain that was filled with a strong thirst for knowledge and a strong curiosity that he dared to try. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to abandon his humanity and go on a killing spree. As a soul from Earth, how could Andre not know the importance of these two attributes to a scientist? To a certain extent, mages were the researchers of this world. Therefore, he had to let the little lowly grow up healthily and preserve this strong curiosity of hers. After receiving a positive answer, Beverly was so happy that she jumped up and shouted excitedly, "Hooray! I finally have the chance to see what it's like outside Lincoln City. If you just want to see the outside world, you can leave tomorrow or the day after. It just so happens I'm going to take over a manor. How about it? Do you want to come along?" As he spoke, Andre pinched the little girl's little nose. Really? The little lowly's face was instantly filled with ecstasy. As a little girl who had always stayed in the city since birth, she dreamt of going out to see it even in her dreams, and was even willing to pay any price for it. Of course, if we're lucky, we can leave in the afternoon. Andre also wanted to see with his own eyes what the manner of this world's nobles looked like, what the main crops and livestock were, and what the level of productivity was like. Because he had always lived in the isolated, lonely mountain town, he urgently needed to have a comprehensive understanding of the entire continent so that he could have a plan in mind. After all, ever since he came to Lincoln City, he had often heard rumors of war. The entire South seemed to be at war every few days from the sea to the land. The scale ranged from a few ships with 80 to 100 ships with tens of thousands of people. Some were because of conflicts of interest, some were because of trivial matters, and some were because of jealousy. It could be said that it was extremely chaotic. Based on the current situation, it was only a matter of time before they were involved in a war. It was impossible to avoid it because both the members of the Sorcerers Association and the newly ennobled nobles had to fulfill the obligation to participate in the war. Moreover, a baron had to undertake 30 military service, which meant that once a war broke out, at least 30 soldiers would have to participate in the war. One had to know that these soldiers did not refer to farmers who picked up weapons, but to veterans who could really fight in battle. Their individual strength was equivalent to that of a healthy civilian and a first-rank warrior. Some of them had experienced many battles and could even become professionals. Chapter 100. Andre could only hope that his manor was large enough to produce enough goods. Otherwise, just recruiting and feeding 30 soldiers would be a headache. This was because the salary of a regular soldier was 5 silver coins a day. Furthermore, they had to provide weapons, armor, and a piece of land that could support their families. If they were veterans with professions, then the salary would be doubled or tripled. Thus, if they hired a small team of elite veterans, then they would have to spend 450 gold coins a month. That was enough to buy a level 3 magic scroll. In fact, the power of a level 3 spell was far greater than that of dozens of soldiers. A single fireball spell could produce the effect of a heavy artillery bombardment on Earth. Within a radius of 10 meters, all people and creatures would be engulfed by the horrifying explosion and flames. Even feudal knights with strong physiques would be seriously injured or disabled if they were not killed by the fireball. The destructive power of spellcasters was far greater than that of close combat professionals. It was because of this that mages had a very high status in most countries and cities. On one hand, there were very few of them, and they couldn't be trained quickly. On the other hand, the mysterious arcane spells could do many unimaginable things, and were often used by those in power to strengthen their rule and defeat their enemies. In addition to the above, mages were often much smarter than most people. They could help with planning and strategizing, and could become very important advisors and advisors. In Linton City, almost all nobles with enough money would hire a mage to serve their family. It wasn't just a symbol of status and power, but also an insurance to ensure the safety of the family members and their businesses. Whether it was the age of cold weapons or the age of firearms, the army was always a monster that ate gold. It wasn't something that could be played with just a little money, and it wasn't something that could be done with just a bunch of farmers and a bunch of weapons. In the history of Earth, it was no joke for a regular army of hundreds or even thousands to defeat tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of peasant rebels. It was a true difference in strength between the two sides. Many times, the so-called advantage in numbers was just a joke and would be crushed in an instant in the face of absolute quality. The Council of Linton City clearly understood this principle, and so strictly regulated the quality of military service. It was impossible to find a few farmers to replace them. Just as Andre was considering where to find 30 veterans, he suddenly saw Eunice and Small Eyes in front of him facing off against a group of fully armed guards. A girl wearing a tight white corset and a white translucent gauze skirt seemed to be asking something, and that beautiful figure looked a little familiar. He didn't dare to delay, and hurriedly stepped forward to ask loudly, "What's going on? Can someone explain it to me?" Just as he finished speaking, the girl suddenly turned around and flew over to give him a passionate kiss. She said excitedly, "Oh, heavens, my hero, you finally appeared. When I saw the ugly meatball and the woman with the long tail, I knew you must be around here. They're so terrible to not tell me where you were. Chloe, why is it you?" Andre hurriedly hugged her slender waist and pulled this infatuated and naturally airhead noble girl off him. He gently placed her on the ground, and at the same time looked her up and down. It had to be said that after dressing up, the young miss of the Mariel family looked completely different. Every move of hers had clearly gone through strict training. She appeared very elegant and polite, especially the small part of her white and tender chest that was exposed in the front. It was really hard for people to control themselves. Coupled with the translucent crystal shoes on her feet, she fully displayed the youthful vitality that only a young girl could have. Of course, there was also the wealth of the Mariel family, because just the pearl-studded corset she was wearing was worth at least 5,000 gold coins, and the shiny crystal shoes were worth more than 7,000 gold coins. It could be said that as long as someone could snatch this noble girl away, they wouldn't have to worry about making a living for the rest of their lives. As long as they weren't too prodigal, they could eat, drink, and play without any worries until they died. "Why can't it be me? Don't you welcome me to come find you?" Chloe stroked her long black hair that had been messed up by the wind, her two large dark green eyes flashing. The two plump peaks in front of her chest were pressed too tightly against each other and were starting to deform a little. Because the two of them were so close, Andre could even smell the fragrance on her body and instantly had a physiological reaction. He hurriedly took 2 steps back with a wry smile and explained, "No, that's not what I meant. I mean, why are you here with my magical pet and servant? Did something unpleasant happen?" As a youth entering puberty, he really couldn't stand her passion, especially now that he had been abstinent for so long. Even the slightest bit of intimacy with the opposite sex would produce a strong impulse, not to mention kissing and hugging. He was really afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and would do the girl in front of him. Chloe pursed her lips and pointed at Eunice as she complained, "That woman is too evil. In order to find you, I've been running through half of Linton City since this morning, but she didn't tell me where you were." "Find me? What's the matter?" Andre didn't want to continue on this topic with the girl and decisively changed the topic. His experience in his previous life had taught him that one should never try to reason with women, because when you try to reason with them, they would talk about their feelings for you, and when you talked about their feelings, they would talk reason with you. Without a doubt, this was an endless cycle. All smart men knew that diverting a woman's attention at this time was the best choice. Otherwise, you would quickly understand how terrifying a woman's trump card was, crying, throwing a tantrum, and threatening to hang herself. "Oh, see, I forgot. Come with me. Today is a good day. We have to hurry to the slave market, or it'll be too late." Having said that, Chloe immediately grabbed Andre's hand and dragged him directly into the carriage. The little lowly followed closely behind, and Eunice and Small Eyes were invited to another carriage. Then, this group of more than 20 people set off in the direction of Linton City's slave market. All the pedestrians along the way avoided them, afraid of being hit by the galloping carriage. In Orire, the nobles had many privileges. One of them was that they didn't have to pay with their lives if they accidentally killed a commoner. They only had to pay with some gold coins, so most commoners would quickly avoid the nobles when they saw them, or stand on both sides of the road and take off their hats in salute to prevent misfortune from falling on their heads. Chapter 101. When the carriage started to move, Andre adjusted his robe and smiled helplessly. He asked the noble girl sitting opposite him, "Chloe, what did you say about going to the slave market?" The last place he wanted to go was the slave market. He was afraid of seeing the miserable situation inside. This was not because he was soft-hearted, but because of the moral values he had learned in his previous life. It was just like how most modern people would sympathize with a homeless child when they saw a terminally ill child, and would be willing to help if they could. Of course, it's to repay you for saving my life. My aunt said that you have just been conferred the title of Baron because of your outstanding achievements, so you must not have recruited any private soldiers. So she asked me to help you choose 30 strong slaves. Today is the auction of high-quality slaves that only happens once every 2 months. If you make a mistake, you can only wait for the next auction. Chloe replied with a matter-of-fact look on her face. Obviously, in her eyes, buying slaves was just like buying a piece of furniture or jewelry. There was no psychological burden at all, and she did not consider the complicated issues of human nature. Well, in fact, Andre also knew that ordinary people in Orire could not have the so-called freedom and equality. The serfs and tenants in the inland kingdoms were basically bound to the land and belonged to the private property of the nobles. Once they escaped, they would be executed immediately. There was not much difference between them and slaves. The only advantage was that they were protected by the nobles while paying high taxes. If monsters, beasts, or robbers attacked, the local nobles would mobilize their private soldiers to encircle and suppress them. When they encountered disasters, they would also receive a certain degree of relief. This was because in this world, population was a relatively important resource. After all, the roads were generally vast but sparsely populated. The monsters and beasts in the wild were dozens or even hundreds of times more than humans. Therefore, with a sufficient population, more land could be cultivated and more food could be harvested. As for the real slaves, they were definitely more miserable than the serfs and tenants. Their fate was completely in the hands of their masters. Those who lived a good life could wear gold and silver, and their lives were not worse than those of the nobles. Those who did not live a good life could not even be compared to the animals. When the animals were used up, they had to be fed and rest, but they could only be exhausted to death. Especially in the mines near Lincoln City, it was said that the number of slaves who died every year was as high as thousands, and the number would double or triple in the event of a collapse. This showed how bad their living situation was. There were many reasons for this, one of which was the frequent wars. Many traditional feudal kingdoms still had the habit of plundering enemy villages and towns. Once they conquered a village or town, they would destroy everything without a second thought. Then, they would turn the population into slaves and sell them to the merchants following the army in exchange for large amounts of gold coins. If the local ruler or king was willing to pay the ransom, then it would be fine. If not, then these people would be sold to other places. Therefore, there would always be a large number of ordinary slaves circulating in the market. Once they were sold out, the merchants would immediately send another batch. Compared to ordinary people, craftsmen, scholars, and elite soldiers were much more expensive. Sometimes, people with professions would even be put up for sale in the slave market. Once they appeared, there would be a rush to buy them. Therefore, an auction would only be held once every few months. One had to know that these people often had a certain amount of wealth, enough to pay the ransom for themselves. Even if they could not afford it themselves, the forces they relied on would often pay for them. They were very professional, especially elite soldiers. Every noble would want to keep as many as they could. As long as it did not exceed their own limits, they would keep as many as they could to deal with all kinds of dangers. However, Andre was a mage himself. He was not at all interested in these things that were regarded as treasures in the eyes of most nobles. As long as he learned a level 3 spell, he could use his terrifying arcane spells to turn 50 or so soldiers into minced meat at any time. If it wasn't for the noble act that stipulated that a baron had to provide at least 30 soldiers, he would not even have wanted to hire a single one. Sitting in the bumpy carriage, Chloe was a little bored. She turned her gaze to the silent little girl and asked curiously, "Little girl, can you tell me your name?" "My name is Beverly. I'm Master's apprentice." The little girl answered timidly. She did not know why, but she seemed to be a little shy. "Apprentice?" Chloe was a little surprised. "Oh, my goodness. You're not a mage apprentice, are you?" Andre saw that the little girl seemed to be a little afraid of nobles. He comforted her by stroking her hair and took the initiative to take over the topic. He smiled and nodded. "That's right. She's an apprentice that I've chosen. She's very talented. I believe that it won't be long before she can master the true power of arcane spells. What a lucky girl. Quickly see if I have the talent to become a mage. I also want to be your apprentice." After saying that, Chloe hurriedly took off her white lace gloves and the lady's hat on her head, revealing her hands and face. Her naive and expectant look immediately made Andre laugh. He immediately waved his hand and explained, "I think you might have misunderstood something. The most important qualification to become a mage is intelligence. In other words, your brain's ability to learn, remember, and think logically. You don't need to read palms or face. These are all tricks that entertainers come up with to make money." After hearing these words, Chloe's face fell instantly. She pouted and complained in a low voice, "Damn it. Didn't those bards say that if you're not a real mage, you can tell if you're a real mage by looking carefully at the patterns on your hands and eyes? Ha ha ha. Those stories you've heard are all artistic embellishments and exaggerations. Real adventures in the wild are usually very difficult. Most of the time, you can't make a fire. You have to eat hard rations for several days in a row. You have to sleep in bushes full of stones and mosquitoes. If you're unlucky, you might even be attacked by monsters and beasts. If you're not careful, you might even lose your life. Think about it. If the bards told the stories so realistically, would anyone still listen to them? Andre laughed as he explained the scary side of adventure to this noble girl who grew up in a greenhouse. He could see that although she had some common problems of nobles, such as thinking too highly of herself and lacking common sense, she was very kind in nature. She didn't put on the airs of a noble lady, nor did she put on a high and mighty attitude. Other than being a little infatuated and natural airhead, she was pretty good. Chapter 102. Of course, as a man with normal physiology, Andre actually enjoyed having a young and beautiful girl of noble birth constantly fawning over him. Sometimes, they could even do some more intimate actions, although in his opinion, there was no future between them. As a transmigrator and a mage, Andre was destined to embark on a lonely path of pursuing truth and power in this life. Perhaps he would live like a lover with one or more women for a period of time, but in the end, he would definitely abandon everything and go on the road again. He longed to find out the reason why he came to this world, to unravel the secret of the tattoo on his hand, and to possess the legendary power to destroy the world. All of these required not only tireless research and exploration, but also deep into the world to search for lost ruins and underground cities. For a mage who focused on arcane power, love and family were too far away. Moreover, he had not decided whether to completely integrate into this world, so he did not want to leave too many attachments. Chloe did not know what Andre was thinking at the moment. She held her chin with her hand and sighed with curiosity. I see. No wonder Annie always said not to listen to the stories told by the bards. She always said that they exaggerate things more than 10 times. Countess Anastasia, is right. Although the bard stories are mostly based on real people, they had a lot of fictitious plots in order to make it more interesting. After all, they're just for the entertainment of the public, so it's fine as long as you don't take it seriously. When Andre was in Lonely Mountain Town, he had seen a few similar books from Merchant Rotter. At first, he was very fascinated by them and felt that this world was simply too exciting. It was many times better than the fantasy movies on Earth. However, as he read more and more books, he realized that such novels were the same. Furthermore, they were completely different from the professional books. He immediately understood that novels were novels after all. They were similar to the biographies of the big shots on Earth. They were just shamelessly flattering the main characters. This was especially so for the stories of the founding kings. They were extremely melodramatic. Not only were they poignant love stories, but they were also affectionate and righteous characters. They were exactly the same as the melodramatic dramas of the Korean nation, which claimed to be the largest country in the universe on Earth. Anyone with half a brain would know that anyone who could become the supreme ruler of a country must be proficient in political skills and tactics. It could be said that all of them were ambitious and ruthless. How could such a person be affectionate and righteous? How could he be willing to die for a woman? In their eyes, supreme power was the most important. As for other things, they could all stand aside. With power and land in hand, would they be afraid of women? Would they be afraid that no one would be willing to be loyal to them? Perhaps there were really very few idealists in the world who could maintain a noble character and not be afraid of any power or authority, but most people still preferred to pursue power, money, land, and social status. Therefore, they inevitably had to give up some things, such as conscience and integrity. Obviously, from Chloe's performance so far, there was no doubt that she had taken the exaggerated stories as real people and had developed a strong hero complex. Perhaps this was a reason why she was naturally a little silly and infatuated. She made people feel that she was a little cute, but also a little sad. Fortunately, she was born in a big noble family and had always been carefully protected. Otherwise, she would have long been deceived and sold off somewhere. Andre felt that he had to let this kind and innocent noble girl know the dangers of the world. Along the way, he told her many darker stories and some common deceit. She was shocked again and again as she listened. In the end, she was completely captivated. Unknowingly, half an hour passed just like that. It was only when they arrived at their destination that she slowly came back to her senses. How scary. No wonder Father and Aunt never let me go out alone. There are so many bad people in the world. They should all be arrested and thrown into prison," Chloe said fiercely as she waved her fist. However, with her current dress and beautiful face, she did not have any deterrence at all. On the contrary, she looked pure and cute, which could easily arouse the evil desires hidden in the hearts of men. Glancing at the young lady's angry look, Andre chuckled and shook his head. These people won't be caught so easily. As soon as they realize that the situation is not good, they will immediately escape and continue their scam in another place a little further away. Therefore, I suggest that you listen to your father and aunt and stay under the protection of the guards. Otherwise, a young and beautiful noble girl like you will definitely be the first target." Chloe stuck out her tongue mischievously and refuted. "That is not necessarily true. When I was young, my tutor praised me for being much smarter than other children of the same age. I feel that I can see through the little tricks of those swindlers." "Ha, perhaps. But swindlers not only use lies to deceive, they also use violence. I don't think you have the ability to protect yourself." Andre shrugged with a smile and pushed open the door to get off. He had no intention of debating with this noble girl that high IQ did not equate to high EQ. There were many examples of mages holding themselves up in their own fields all day doing research, not interacting with the outside world for years, decades, or even their entire lives. Moreover, Chloe had obviously stayed at home for too long. Otherwise, she would not be immersed in the exaggerated stories of the bards. As soon as he jumped off the carriage, Andre instantly felt the prosperous slave market of Linton City. There were at least 20 carriages with noble family emblems in the vicinity. The rest were mostly merchants, with a small portion of the wealthy middle class. Everyone was gathered in a small square, with a simple wooden platform in the middle. It looked like they were waiting for the auction to begin. Glancing at the slaves locked up in cages at the back, he let out a sigh of relief. Although the people inside were not good, they were not too bad either. At the very least, the linen robes they wore were enough to cover their bodies, and there were not many signs of abuse on their bodies. Only their spirits were a little dispirited. Chloe stepped on the hands of the servant and crawled out of the carriage. She hurriedly looked towards the small square and patted her chest with a look of relief. "Phew, I'm not late at all. Follow me, we'll go to the front row." Saying that, she left the servants and guards behind and pulled Andre's hand forward. Along the way, she kept responding to the people who stood up to greet her. Soon, they found an empty seat in the front row. Chapter 103. It was just enough for two people to sit side by side. As for the pitiful Beverly, she could only sit on her mentor's lap, looking around with her big eyes, curious about everything. She obviously couldn't understand the cruel nature of the slave trade, so she was just joining in the fun. Coincidentally, not long after the three of them sat down, a middle-aged man in formal attire appeared on the stage. He first bowed to everyone present, then cleared his throat and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you all know that I'm a straightforward person, so I now announce the commencement of Linton City's bi-monthly premium slave auction. Asterisk clap, 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 clap." Asterisk sparse applause sounded from below the stage. Be it nobles or merchants, men or women, they were all very reserved and didn't show any enthusiasm. While everyone was applauding, Andre lowered his voice and asked, "It's starting." I thought he would give a speech to stir up the mood. Also, these buyers don't seem to be very enthusiastic. Their reactions are so cold. Huh. With the culture of a slave trader, it's already not bad to be able to finish what he just said. Also, don't be fooled by the people around you. You'll find out when the bidding starts. As long as they see something they like, they won't care about the price. Sometimes, the price of a slave can even be comparable to a small ship. Before Chloe could finish her words, the scene suddenly quieted down. She quickly shut her mouth and put on the appearance of a noble lady. The man standing in the middle of the stage had a fawning smile on his face. He opened his arms and continued. For today's special day, our Trika merchant group has carefully prepared 800 healthy slaves. There are barbarians from the far north, as well as black people from the tropical islands in the south. From the defeated nobles to the ordinary slaves who can work in the fields, it can be said that we have everything. All right, let's cut to the chase. First, let me introduce the first batch of goods, the elite warriors from the distant grassland kingdom of Brant. They are known as the cavalry of the wind. As soon as he finished speaking, a group of chained, shirtless men were brought up. All of them had black hair and black eyes. They had long beards and hair. Their chests and arms were tattooed with various patterns of wild beasts. Each of them had bulging muscles and looked very valiant. Andre noticed that most of these people were a little bow-legged. He didn't need to ask to know that it was because they had spent too much time on horseback and their riding posture wasn't very scientific. Obviously, the first batch of slaves were real cavalry, and they were definitely not heavy cavalry, but archers similar to the nomads. Just when he was secretly estimating the value of these elite cavalrymen, the auctioneer slapped the slaves' bodies hard and then rudely opened their mouths and then shouted to the audience, "Look, what a strong physique. What firm muscles. Look at these teeth. There was no wear at all. We only have 50 on hand. It will be auctioned off in 10 batches. 5 in a batch. The starting price is 2,000 gold coins. According to the old rules, everyone can start bidding now." Absolute silence. None of the buyers present showed any interest, and there wasn't even anyone who bid. On one hand, they felt that the price of 400 gold coins per person was a little expensive, and on the other hand, they felt that these people weren't of much use. As Linton City was a coastal city, it was more inclined towards infantry and sailors. The grassland warriors of the Brant Kingdom were not qualified to be infantry, and they didn't even have the ability to swim. Even if they stayed on the sea for a long time, they would suffer from severe seasickness. Furthermore, feeding them required a large number of war horses, which was not worth it at all. One had to know that feeding war horses meant that a terrifying amount of food was consumed. After all, war horses weren't horses that pulled carriages. They had to be fed fine fodder and undergo strict training every day. Even many nobles couldn't afford such consumption. After all, even in the warm and humid Linton City, the price of food was still very expensive. The commoners could only afford to eat black bread that was mixed with a large amount of skin, germ, starch, and a small amount of endosperm. The wheat flour didn't even reach half of that. From this, one could see how precious food was. After living in lonely mountain town for a few years, Andre already had a clear understanding of the backward agriculture in this world. It was completely equivalent to the dark Middle Ages of Europe on Earth. However, because the land in Lonely Mountain Town was too barren and the climate was too cold, it wasn't suitable to grow any crops. Therefore, he didn't even have the mood to improve his farming tools, and only focused on hunting. After all, eating more meat was much better than eating the black bread that was comparable to bricks. Originally, he thought that the South was relatively more open, and the level of agriculture should be very high. However, looking at the faces of the nobles and merchants, it wasn't much better. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so stingy with the money to feed the horses. Seeing that the atmosphere of the auction was becoming more and more awkward, the middle-aged man, standing on the high platform, anxiously stomped his feet. He also knew that the warriors of the Brant Kingdom couldn't be sold for a good price in Linton City, but he had no choice. Who told the higher-ups of the merchant guild to go crazy and test the waters? While the buyers were discussing, Chloe turned her head and asked quietly, "How is it? Are you interested in these fellows? I believe that if no one bids after a while, there'll be a 50% discount. At that time, you can get all of them for 10,000 gold coins. As long as you have enough grass near your manor, it won't be a problem to feed 50 war horses." Andre knew that this should be the thank you gift that Countess Anastasia mentioned yesterday. However, he didn't have time to look at his own manor, so he could only take out the deed and pass it to the girl beside him. "This is my deed. It says that including Tua's Valley and all the surrounding mountains, all of it belongs to my manor. There's also a small castle." "Tua's Valley?" Chloe's eyes lit up when she saw the deed, and a playful expression appeared on her face. Wow, I didn't think that the Dukes would finally give this land to you. The area there is quite large. Not only does it have large tracts of farmland, but it also has boundless grasslands. The only problem is that the number of farmers is a little low, only about 200 households, so the output isn't much. I suggest that you buy these warriors. Not only are they excellent horsemen and hunters, but they are also quite good at herding. They definitely won't lose money. Chapter 104. You even know how to build a fief. Andre looked at the noble girl beside him in surprise. He didn't expect that someone with such a love-struck and naturally silly personality would be able to talk about this matter so clearly and logically. It was simply too surprising. Chloe smiled proudly and explained, "Of course. I finished the fief building course when I was 12, and I didn't miss a single detail, whether it was farming, manners, or town planning. My tutor even praised me for being a genius in the field of internal affairs in the future." The girl's proud expression made Andre smile, and he pretended to be serious as he nodded. "All right, I've always listened to the advice of professionals. You said you'd buy it, so I'll buy it. Once we're done, we'll immediately head to the manor outside the city. I can't wait to see what a fief looks like." Andre was quite excited at the thought of owning a large piece of land of his own. After all, in the 21st century, land was ridiculously expensive, especially in some of the major cities of the Celestial Empire. Ordinary people could only afford to buy a toilet in their entire lives, but he now owned a huge manor. According to the law of Linton City, this manor would become a hereditary fief. No matter what he wanted to do, how much taxes he collected, or what laws he issued, no one was allowed to interfere. It could also be passed down to his son, daughter, or even any designated heir. As long as he could provide 30 soldiers in time of war, it would never be taken back. In fact, according to Andre's research, the various city-states of the Green Sea Alliance had a very interesting system. On one hand, the power of capitalism was rapidly rising, and many merchants could buy a title as soon as they reached a certain level of wealth. On the other hand, the traditional nobles still maintained the feudal system, but they changed their fiefs into manors and used a more rational method to produce sufficient food. Of course, since they were city-states, the city hall took back the right of the nobles to execute commoners. At the same time, they also stipulated that the death penalty must be brought to the city court for a new trial. Otherwise, the nobles would be fined more than 500 gold coins for the unnatural death of a commoner in their manor. It was because of this law that more and more nobles with manors were inclined to use slaves. Although the initial investment was slightly higher, the food grown by the slaves all belonged to the manor owner. Furthermore, there was no need to pay wages or follow the law, because Linton City had yet to enact any laws to protect slaves. It was said that more than 80% of the land outside the city that belonged to the nobles were using slaves. The total number was almost 1/3 of the population, and it was still increasing. Even the merchants and the wealthy middle class in the city were aware of this and were buying slaves to work for them. However, it was a pity that cavalry wasn't welcomed here. After all, they weren't powerful feudal knights who could fight against dozens of people. Once they lost their horses, their fighting strength would instantly drop. Therefore, no one cared about them at all. 5 minutes had passed, and the middle-aged man standing on the stage was sweating profusely. Finally, he couldn't bear the huge pressure and announced loudly, "All right, it seems that the ladies and gentlemen are not satisfied with this price. I have decided to follow the old rules and sell the slaves for half price. Now, 50 slaves only cost 10,000 gold coins. I promise. They are definitely qualified warriors and archers." Chloe, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately raised her white lace glove and shouted, "I bid 10,000 gold coins. 10,000 gold coins. This young lady has already bid 10,000 gold coins. I wonder if anyone will bid higher." Seeing that someone had finally bid, the middle-aged man seemed to have seen his savior and hurriedly shouted at the top of his lungs. At the same time, he looked at the buyer with eager eyes, hoping for a second person to bid. Although many people below the stage were tempted, they all gave up on the idea after seeing the noble emblem on Chloe's carriage. While House Marius wasn't considered a top noble in Linton City, their influence wasn't small at all. Their family's influence was spread across the various cities of the Green Sea Alliance, and their combined strength was absolutely terrifying. Therefore, most people didn't want to be unhappy over such a small matter. After shouting 3 times in a row, the middle-aged man found that no one else was bidding. He could only gloomily announce that the sale of 50 warriors of the Brant Kingdom had been sold at a low price of 10,000 gold coins. He swore to himself that he wouldn't enter the plains again, even if he was beaten to death. After deducting the cost of transportation, food, and taxes, he wouldn't be able to earn a few copper coins. It was basically a waste of effort. One had to know that the slave trade was one of the most profitable businesses in the world. The return rate could almost reach 1,000%. But now, as a slave merchant, he felt a deep sense of humiliation. He swore to himself that he would definitely report this failure to the chairman and have that self-important idiot scram as soon as possible. In the next hour or so, a few scholars, craftsmen, soldiers, and even a few high-ranked warriors were auctioned off. The buyers below the stage weren't as silent as before. They all began to bid against each other, especially the warriors. The lowest was sold for 800 gold coins, while the highest was sold for more than 3,000 gold coins. The nobles and merchants of Linton City were always sparing no expense when it came to truly high-quality slaves. Chloe took the opportunity to buy a scholar, 2 blacksmiths, a carpenter, and a tanner, spending another 2,000 gold coins. According to her, a manor should have at least 1 manager, so a scholar who was literate and knew how to calculate. The 2 blacksmiths were in charge of crafting farming tools, armor, and weapons. The carpenter could make furniture, wooden shelves, and the like. The tanner could process animal hides and make them into leather armor, boots, backpacks, tents, and other goods. In short, a manor was equivalent to a special independent economic system. It was best to prepare a little bit of everything and let it run on its own. All one had to do was to check the accounts every once in a while. Andre had never come into contact with a real manor before. The manors on Earth had lost their original purpose in his previous life, becoming a place for leisure and vacations. So, he listened to whatever the other party said. There was no harm in preparing more things anyway. Chapter 105. The slave auction lasted for quite a long time. It started at 10:30 in the morning and ended at noon. In the end, Chloe handed over a piece of parchment with 12,000 gold coins written on it. She stamped her seal on it and brought out the 55 slaves. She pointed at the burly men behind her and said with a smile, "These people are now yours. You don't need any documents to keep slaves in Linton City. The brand on their necks is the best proof. If you were in Napery City, you would have to go to the city hall to do some paperwork. Using 10,000 gold coins as a thank you gift isn't a little too expensive?" Andre asked in a half-joking tone. He noticed that the topless slave soldiers were expressionless, as if they had already accepted their fate. Even if their shackles were all unlocked, they didn't have any intention of resisting. They just followed behind the girl half dead, doing whatever she told them to do. It was as if they had suffered a certain degree of mental damage. In comparison, the scholar, carpenter, blacksmith, and tanner were all normal, just a little uneasy. They weren't sure if their master was a benevolent person or a devil who liked to torture people. As a direct member of the Mariel family, Chloe didn't care about 10,000 gold coins at all. She shrugged nonchalantly and said, "On the contrary, not only do I not feel that it's expensive, but it's also a little light. Let's not dwell on this. Let's go. Take me to your manor." Now, Andre looked at the sun above his head and then glanced at the little lowly whose stomach was already rumbling. "I think we should eat lunch first. It's not a good idea to run out of the city with an empty stomach. Oh, damn it. I'm suddenly feeling hungry after hearing what you said." Chloe's stomach was very disappointing as it growled along. Seeing the girl's natural dullness acting up again, Andre didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, It seems that we have reached an agreement to solve the problem of your stomach first. Elsa is almost done with lunch. I'll treat you this afternoon. Then what are we waiting for? I'm so hungry that I can eat an entire cow. After saying that, Chloe impatiently gave a few orders to the guards, then pulled Andre onto the carriage and headed straight for the slums. Sitting in the carriage, Andre smiled and asked the girl sitting opposite him, "What did you say to the guards just now? They don't look too happy." Chloe spread her hands and replied, "It's nothing. I just asked them to take the slaves to eat something and then wait at the city gate. These guys are unhappy because they don't want me to leave the city." "Don't want you to leave the city? Why?" "The security around Lincoln City was pretty good. A few patrol teams were always patrolling within a 10-kilometer radius. Very few bandits and monsters dared to approach this area. Otherwise, they would immediately be surrounded by an army." Andre really couldn't understand why the guard had such an expression as if his father had died. The 8-meter tall strong warrior almost cried out, because, forget it. It's better if I don't tell you. Otherwise, you'll definitely laugh at me," Chloe said because 3 times in a row. At the end, a faint blush appeared on her face, and she acted shamelessly. It was obvious that this matter was very awkward. It might even be her dark history. However, the more the girl didn't say, the more curious Andre was. In order to get more information from her, he pretended to be serious and promised, "Don't worry, tell me. I swear I won't laugh at you. After all, even the gods will forgive young people when they make mistakes." "Really?" Chloe blinked and asked. "Of course." Andre nodded without hesitation. After hesitating for a while, Chloe finally mustered her courage and said in a voice that was just a little louder than a mosquito, "When I was 13, I tried to go on an adventure outside the city under the protection of 5 guards. Coincidentally, I met a young goblin one day. I carried my sword and chased after it, but what was the result?" Seeing that the girl was stuttering and trying to cover it up, Andre hurriedly urged her in a low voice. He could imagine that the process and ending of this story would be very happy. As the entertainment programs on Oriar were quite backward, he hadn't encountered anything that could make him laugh for many years. Therefore, he was very eager for her to make him happy. "In the end, I accidentally rolled down the hill and sprained my ankle. Then, my weapon was taken away by the goblin. Not only did it take away everything that I had, it even laughed at me and called me a fool. By the time the guards caught up with it, it had already run away." When Chloe said the last word, her whole face was red as if it had been boiled. She obviously knew how embarrassing this matter was. After all, goblins were almost equivalent to the lowest level monsters in the wild. Young goblins were even worse. Normally, a 12-year-old child would be able to beat them up, regardless of whether it was a boy or a girl. There is no doubt that this noble girl's motor skills were definitely the type that would trip over her own feet while walking on the road. Andre resisted the urge to laugh and pretended to be serious as he nodded. "All right, I understand. Your guards must be worried that something like this will happen again. You must know that even though the goblin took away some things, it's already very merciful that it didn't kill you with a weapon." He didn't know what was in Chloe's head, but she actually nodded as well. "Yes, I think so too." In an instant, Andre could no longer control his emotions and burst out laughing. Soon, the carriage was filled with his laughter and the young girl's shameful and angry pouting. As they chatted and laughed along the way, the carriage quickly arrived at 60 White Dew Street. Before the carriage came to a stop, Andre saw through the window that a truck with wooden boxes was parked in front of them. Although it didn't look very big, the wheels were pressed into the ground. It looked like the things inside were very heavy. A man in full body armor was saying something to Elsa. He was none other than Knight Azit. Without asking, it was obvious that this guy was here to deliver money. The boxes on the truck were probably filled with gold coins. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a small group of soldiers escorting it. The young widow obviously didn't dare to accept such a large sum of money so easily. Therefore, she was at a loss as to what to do. She kept emphasizing that she couldn't make the decision. No matter how the other party explained, There were only 4 words that she couldn't make the decision. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.